Hello, hope you're doing well. I'm going to build a full stack polling app using React.js as a frontend, Spring Boot as a backend, MySQL as a database, and Material UI as a UI library. First, I will give you the overview of the project, and after that, we will start the implementation of the project. So let's get started. Let me search here the temp mail. I'm going to get the temporary mail from this site. You can see here the sign up page of our project. Let me enter here the mail. Let me write here the first name and the last name. Let me add here the password. Let's click on this sign up button. And you can see here the notification that is a sign up successful, and it's navigate us to the login page. Let me add here the credentials to log in the user. Let's click on this sign in button and it navigate us to the dashboard component. We are generating the JWT token on the login API. Let me show you the local storage of the browser. You can see the local storage where we have a token and the user object. Let me close this. You can see here the dashboard page where the user can see all the polls. You can see here the second nav link, that is a post poll. Let me click on this and it's navigate us to the post poll component where you can see the form to create a new poll. Let me enter here the details like question, which car is your favorite? In the options input, I'm going to add here the different options like BMW, Audi, Volvo, Ford. Let me select here the expiration date of this poll. Let's click on this post button to create the new poll. And you can see here the notification that is a poll posted successfully. And it also navigates us to the dashboard page. Let's go to the second tab, little bit scroll down. You can see here the mailbox where we got a mail that is a new poll posted. Let's view this. You can see here the subject that is a new poll posted, and you can see here the mail body. Let's go to the previous tab. You can see here the newly created poll by this logged in user. And let me scroll down. You can see here the polls that posted by another user, where these are showing the final results of the polls. Let's go to the third page of our application, that is a My Polls. In this page, the logged in user can see my posted polls. Let's go back to dashboard page. I'm going to give the vote on this poll. As you can see, we got a notification that is a poll voted successfully. We are showing here the results, like how many percent votes have on these options, and this check circle is indicates that this logged in user is selected this option on this poll. You can see here the expiration of this poll. Let's view this poll. You can see here the fourth page of our project, that is a view poll by ID, where we can see the details of the poll, like how many likes and the comments on this poll. I'm going to post a comment on this poll, like good one. Comment posted successfully. As you can see the content of the comment and the remaining details, like posted a few seconds ago by you. Let's give a like to this poll. As you can see, the number of the likes is changed. Let's click on this logout button. Let me log in here, another user. And you can see here the created poll by the first user. I'm going to give a vote on this poll as a second user. So I'm going to select this option, that is a Volvo. As you can see, the poll got updated. Let's view this poll. I'm going to add here the comment as a second user. Let's post the comment. And you can see comment posted successfully. Let me give here the like. The count of the likes and comment got updated. Let's go back to dashboard page. And you can see here the list of polls that posted by this logged in user, where these are showing the final results of the polls because it's expired. Let me log out and I'm going to log in the first user. Let's go to my polls page. The logged in user can also delete my recent posted polls. You can see here the delete icon. So I'm going to click on this icon to delete this poll. And you can see the notification that is a poll deleted successfully. Let's go to dashboard page. As you can see, we are getting the updated polls from the DB. I'm going to create a new poll. Let me select here the expiration. As you can see the notification that is a poll posted successfully. Let me log out and I'm going to log in here the second user. Let's go to MySQL database and you can see the tables that we have in our project. That is a user, poll, options, likes, comments, and the votes. You can see here the poll table. Let me refresh this. I'm going to update the expiration date of the recent posted poll. Today is 22 April. I'm going to update the expiration like 21. Let's update the table. Now I'm going to give the vote on the expired poll by selecting this option. As you can see, we got a notification that is a poll has expired and cannot be voted on. We will not allow the user to give the vote on the expired poll.
Let me search here Spring Initializer. As you can see, the official website of Spring Initializer. From this, let me select the project type that we have, Maven, language that we have, Java, Spring Boot version that will be a default 3.4.4, group that we have, com.poll, artifact that we have, poll Spring Boot, description let me add here, polling application, package name that we have, com.poll, packaging that will be a jar, Java version that we will use 17. Now I'm going to add the dependencies in our Spring Boot application. First we have the Spring Web dependency. After that, let me add the dependency for Spring Data GPA. With this, let me add here the dependency for Lombok. Fourth, we have MySQL driver. Now let's click on the generate button. As you can see, the downloaded file. Let me extract this. I'm going to open this folder inside the IntelliJ IDE. As you can see, the project structure, where we have the main file inside the src, and as you can see, the resources package, where we have a file that we have application.properties. This file will carry the configuration for our Spring Boot application. After that, let me open here pom.xml. This file will carry the versions of the Spring Boot application. Along this, it will carry the dependencies as well. So as you can see, a list of dependencies that we have added in Spring Initializer. Let me set up the SDK where we have a Java version 17. So first I'm going to create a new schema in MySQL Workbench. Let me connect with this local instance where we have a URL localhost colon 3306, username that we have root. Now inside this, I'm going to create a new schema with the name poll_db_new. Let's click on the apply button and then apply finish. As you can see, a new schema created successfully. After creating the schema, I'm going to add the configuration. Before adding the configuration, let me open here pom.xml. As you can see, the dependency for MySQL connector. Now let me open here application.properties. Let me add here the comment like MySQL configuration. So first we have the data source URL that we have JWT colon MySQL colon / localhost colon 3306 that we have the port. After the slash we have the schema name that is a poll_db_new that we have created inside MySQL Workbench. After the data source URL, I'm going to add the credentials for MySQL Workbench where we have a username and the password. So as you can see, data source username and the data source password that we have root. You can use your own credentials. After the credentials, I'm going to add here data source driver class that we have com.mysql.cj.jdbc.driver. After these, I'm going to add the configuration for Hibernate. So as you can see, this line configures the behavior of Hibernate regarding database schema generation. After this, we have another config that for spring.jpa.show-sql that we have true. This line enables the logging of SQL statements generated by Hibernate. After the configuration, I'm going to run the Spring Boot application. So as you can see, our Spring Boot application started successfully on port 8080. You can change the port as well by adding the configuration in application.properties file. So let me add here the property that we have server.port, and the port I'm going to define here 9000. Let me stop the application and run again. As you can see, our Spring Boot application started on port 9000, but we will use the default port. So I'm going to remove this config. Let me open here the CMD. So here inside this folder, I'm going to write the command to create the new React Vite application. So the command that we have, npm create Vite @latest whole React, that we have the name of the application and the template that we have React. Now let's hit enter. After creating the application, let's navigate inside the folder that we have whole-react. After navigating, I'm going to install npm. It will take a couple of seconds. As you can see, npm installed successfully. After installing the npm, I'm going to run the React.js application. So the command that we have, npm run dev. Now, as you can see, our React.js application running locally on this link. So let me copy this. Let me add inside the browser. And as you can see, the splash screen of a newly created React Vite application. After running the application, let me open this folder inside the VS Code editor. As you can see, the src package. Inside this, we have a main.js that we have the entry point of our React.js application. And as you can see, the file that we have, package.json, this file will carry the versions and the dependencies of our React.js application. As you can see, the main file of our Spring Boot application. So with this, I'm going to create a new folder with the name entities. With this, I'm going to create a new package with the name repositories. With this, I'm going to create one more package with the name DTOs. Now inside the entities, I'm going to create a Java class with the name user. So it will be a public class user. So on the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have entity to make this class as a table in our MySQL database. Second annotation I'm going to add here @data that will use to reduce the boilerplate code and make the getters and the setters of the fields. So inside this, first we have the primary key that we have private long ID. With this, we have a second annotation that we have generated value, where we have a strategy generation type dot identity. Second field that we have private string email. Third field that for password, so it will be a private string password. Fourth we have first name, so it will be a private string first name. Fifth we have last name. So these are the fields that inside the user entity. Now after that, I'm going to create a new class inside the DTOs package. So the Java class name that we have user DTO. So on the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have @data from Lombok that will use to create the getters and the setters of the fields. So inside this, I'm going to add here the fields that we have copied from user entity. So the fields that we have ID, email, first name and the last name. After the user DTO, I'm going to create a user repository inside the repositories package. So it will be a interface and the name that we have user repository. Let me extend this with JP repository. Inside this, we have to pass two parameters. First, we have the entity that we have user. Second, we have to pass here a data type of the primary key that we have long. So on the top of this interface, I'm going to add the annotation that we have @repository to make this interface as a repository in our Spring Boot application. Now you can take a look of a user repository, user DTO, and the user entity. Let's run the Spring Boot application. As you can see, the log in the console that we got, create table user, where we have the fields ID, email, first name, last name, and the password. So inside the src, I'm going to create a new package with the name pages. Inside this, we have a new folder with the name auth. With the auth, we have a second folder with the name header. Now inside the auth, let me create a new folder with the name signup. Second, we have login. Now inside the header component, I'm going to create a new file with the name header.jsx. Same as I'm going to create a new file inside the login. So the file name that we have login.jsx. Inside the signup, let me create a new file with the name signup.jsx. Inside these files, let me create a functions same as the file name. So first I'm going to create a function for header. It will be a const header, and we have to export the header function. So it will be a export default header. Inside this function, we have the return statement where we have a h1 tag. So the caption of the h1 that we have header works. Let me copy this implementation. Let me add inside the login.jsx file. So the function name that we have login, h1 tag caption that we have login works, and we have to export here login. After the login, let me set up this file that we have sign up. So the function name that we have sign up, h1 tag caption that we have sign up works, and we have to export here sign up. After creating the functions, I'm going to create a new folder inside the src with the name services. Inside the services, let me create a new folder with the name auth. Inside the auth, let me create a new file with the name jsx. With pages and the services, we have a new folder with the name utility. Inside this, we have a new file with the name common.jsx. After creating these, let me open here the terminal. Now I'm going to write the command to install the React router DOM. So the command that we have npm install react-router-DOM. Let's hit enter. As you can see, React router DOM installed successfully in our React.js application. Let me close the PowerShell. After installing the React router DOM, let me open here main.jsx file. Now I'm going to wrap the app tag with browser router. As you can see, the import of browser router. So inside this tag, let me add here the tag for app. After that, let me open here app.jsx. So inside this file, I'm going to register auth components as a routing. So let me remove this code. First, we have the header component. Let me import this. Now let's navigate to the browser. As you can see, the header component loaded successfully. After the header component, we have a tag for routes. Inside this, we have the tag for route, where we have a path /register that for signup component. So let me add here the property that we have element, and we have to load here the component that we have sign up. Let me import this. After sign up, let me add here the path for login, and we have to load here the component that we have login. Now let's go back to the browser. Let me add here the path for sign up component that we have /register. As you can see, sign up component loaded successfully. After the register, let me add here the path for login. So as you can see, login component loaded successfully. First of all, let me open here main.jsx file. From this file, I'm going to remove this import that we have index.css. After removing the import, let me open here the docs for material UI. Let's click on get started. Go to the installation page. Let me copy this command, and I'm going to run this command inside our React project. So let me open here the terminal. Let me paste here the command. As you can see, material UI library installed successfully. Now after that, let me get the command to install the material UI icons. So as you can see, the sections for icons. Let me copy this command. Let me run here inside our project. As you can see, material UI icons installed successfully. Now after that, let me open here header component. Now inside the return statement, I'm going to remove this h1 tag. Inside this React fragment, I'm going to add the HTML code to create an navbar for not logged in users. So first we have the tag for box. Let me import this from material UI. Inside the box, we have a tag for app bar. Let me import this. Inside the app bar, we have the tag for toolbar. Let me import this from material UI. Inside the toolbar, we have the tag for icon button. Let me import this. Inside the icon button, we have the tag for menu icon. After the icon button, we have the tag for typography, where we have a caption, polling app. As you can see, let me import the typography tag from material UI. Now after the typography tag, we have the tag for button. First we have the button login. Second, we have sign up. So as you can see, the first button that for login, second button that for register. Actually, these are the nav links. Let me import the link from React Router DOM. After that, I'm going to import here a button from Material UI. Now, as you can see, the property that we have two, where we have a value /login, that we have the path of login component. Second, we have the button for register. For this component, we have the path that we have /register. You can cross-check the path in app.jsx. As you can see, /register for sign up, /login for login component. On the top, let me edit the import of menu icon. So as you can see, the import of menu icon. Now you can take a look of header component. Let's navigate to the browser. As you can see, a navbar for not logged in users, where on the left side we have the menu icon with the navbar title polling app. On the right side, we have the two nav links. First we have login, second we have register. On the click of these nav links, it's navigating us to the sign up and the login pages. Let's remove the white space around the nav bar. So let me open here index.html. On the body tag, let me add here the property that we have style, where we have a padding 0 pixels. Second, that we have margin 0 pixels. Let's go back to the browser. As you can see, the white space removed successfully. So as you can see, a component for login. So inside this function, first I'm going to create a use state for form data. Let me initialize this with use state. Now inside this, we have the following fields. First, we have the email, that is by default empty string. Second, we have password, that is by default empty string. Now after the form data use state, let me create a state for loading, that is by default false. After the use states, let me create a use navigate hook. After the use navigate hook, let me create a function with the name handle input change. It will be a async function. Inside the argument, it will get an event. Now inside this function, we have to extract name and the value from event.target. After extracting these, let me call here the use state that we have set form data. First, we have to clone the form data use state. After that, we have to update the field with the value. So first, we have to define here the field name. For example, email and the password. With the name, we have to pass here value. We will call this function on the onChange event of the text field. After that, I'm going to create a function for handle submit that will use to submit the form. So I'm going to duplicate this function, update the function name that we have, handle submit. So it will be an async function. Inside the argument, it will get an event. Now inside this function, let me add here e.prevent default. So this line will not reload the page while submitting the form. Now after that, let me call here the use state that we have set loading, where we have to make it true. After that, let me add here console.log to print the form values in the console. After printing them, let me call here the use state that we have set loading, where we have to set here false. Now after that, I'm going to add the HTML code inside the return statement. So let me remove this h1 tag. Now inside the React fragment, I'm going to add the tag for backdrop. This backdrop tag will use to show the loader on the screen when loading has true. As you can see, the property that we have open on the backdrop tag. Now let me import here backdrop from Material UI. After that, let me import here circular progress. With this, we have to create a form where we have a email and the password input field with the button. So as you can see, a tag for theme provider. On this tag, we have the property theme where we have a value default theme. Let me create this object on the top. We have to initialize this with create theme. Now I'm going to add the import of create theme and the theme provider tag. So as you can see, the import of create theme and the theme provider tag from Material UI. Now inside the theme provider tag, we have the tag for container. Inside the container, we have the tag for CSS baseline. Let me import the container and the CSS baseline. After the CSS baseline, we have the tag for box. On this box, we have the property SX with the following styling properties that we have margin top, display, select direction, and the align items. Now inside this box tag, we have the tags for avatar and the typography. Inside the avatar tag, we have the tag for log outlined icon. After that, we have the typography tag with the caption sign in. Let me import the avatar and the typography. Let me add the import of this icon on the top. So as you can see, the import of log outlined icon. Now after the typography tag, we have the tag for box. So as you can see, a tag for box. On this tag, we have the event on submit. On this event, we are calling it the function that we have handle submit to submit the form and print the form values in the console. Now inside this box tag, we have the text field for email and the password. So first we have the text field for email. On this tag, we have the property value that we have form data dot email. This property will use to set the default value of this text field. After that, we have the onChange event. On this event, we are calling it the function that we have handle input change that will use to clone the input value to the use state that we have form data. After the email, let me add here the text field for password. So as you can see, a text field for password. Let me import this. On this tag, we have the property value that we have form data dot password. After the value, we have the onChange event. On this event, we are calling it the function that we have handle input change. Now after the text fields, let me add here the tag for button. So as you can see, a tag for button. Let me put this. On this tag, we have the property disabled. We have to disable the button if email or password is empty. Inside the button tag, we have the caption of the button that we have sign in. In case if the loading state value has true, then we have to show the loader on the button. Now after the button tag, we have the tag for grid. So as you can see, a tag for grid. Let me import this. Inside the grid, we have the tag for link with the caption don't have an account, sign up. On the click of this link, we are navigating the user to the sign up page. As you can see, we are calling it the use navigate hook. Inside this, we have passed here the path of a sign up component that we have /register. Now you can take a look of a login component. Let's navigate to the browser. Let me open here the inspect. The error we got in the console that we have box is not defined. Let me import the box. Still we are getting here the error that we have link is not defined. Let me import the link from material UI. Now as you can see, a sign in form. First we have the input for email. Second we have password. After the inputs we have the button sign in. Right now it's disabled. After the button we have the link with the caption don't have an account, sign up. Let's click on this and it's navigating us to a sign up page. Now I'm going to fill the form where we have an email like john@test.com and the password that we have John. Let's click on the sign in button. As you can see, the email and the password that we got in the console. Let me open here a sign up component. With this, let me open here a login component. So from a login component, let me copy the use state for form data and the loading. Let me add inside the function of a sign up. Now first, I'm going to extend form data use state where we have a fields for email, password, first name and the last name. It's by default an empty quotes. At the last, we have a last name that is by default an empty quotes. Now after the use state, let me copy the use navigate hook. Let me add after the loading state inside the sign up function. Now after that, I'm going to copy the function from login component that we have handle input change and the handle submit. Let me add inside the sign up component. So as you can see, a function that we have handle input change that will use to clone the input value to the use state that we have form data. After that, we have the function handle submit that will use to submit the form. Now after that, I'm going to copy the HTML code where we have a tag for theme provider and the backdrop. Let me add inside the return statement of sign up component. At the last, let me copy the imports and the default theme object from login component. Let me add on the top of sign up function. Now I'm going to update the HTML code where we have a caption of typography tag that we have sign up. After that, let me remove these text fields. With this, I'm going to remove a tag for button and the grid. inside this box tag, let me add here the tag for grid. Inside the grid, I'm going to add the tag for another grid where we have a text field for first name. On this tag, we have the property value that we have form data dot first name that will use to set the default value of form data dot first name. Right now, it's an empty string. After the first name, let me add here the tag for grid where we have a input for last name. As you can see, a tag for grid where we have a text field for last name. As you can see, a property that we have value that we have form data dot last name. After that, we have the on change event. On this event, we are calling here the function that we have handle input change that we use to clone the input value to the use state that we have form data. Now after the last name, let me add here the text field for email. So as you can see, a tag for grid. Inside this, we have the tag for text field where we have a property value that we have form data dot email. After the value property, we have the on change event. The last input that for password. So as you can see, a tag for grid. Inside this, we have a tag for text field that for password. Now outside of this, let me add here the tag for button where we have a caption sign up. So as you can see, a tag for button. We have the caption of the button that we have sign up. With this, we are checking here a loading state value. If loading has true, then we have to show a loader on the button. Now after the button tag, we have a tag for grid. Inside this, we have the tag for link where we have a title, already have an account, sign in. On the click of this link, we are navigating the user to the login page. So as you can see, the event that we have on click on this event, we are calling here a use navigate hook that we have navigate. Inside the argument of this, we have passed the path of login component that we have /login. Now you can take a look of a sign up component. Now let's navigate to the browser. Let me open here the inspect. We are getting here the warnings. Item access SM props has been removed. Let's remove these warnings. So on the grid tag, let me remove here item props. After that, let me add here the props that we have size, where we have to define here access that we have 12. Second, we have SM 6. Let me remove this. Let me add these props on the other grids as well. Now you can take a look of a sign up component. Let's go back to the browser. Let me refresh the page again. Still we are getting here the warning with the props of item. Let me check this. Let me remove this. Warning removed. As you can see, a sign up form where first we have the first name and the last name in the same row. After that we have the input for email. At the last we have the input for password. After the inputs we have the button with the caption sign up. Right now it's disabled. At the last we have the link with the caption already have an account, sign in. On the click of this, we are navigating the user to the login page. Now I'm going to fill the form. Now as you can see, we are getting here email, first name, last name and the password. After creating a sign up form, let me update the login form where we have to remove the item props. First, I'm going to create a user role enum. So inside this package, let me create a new folder with the name enums. Inside this, let me create a new enum with the name user role. Inside this enum, we have to define here a user role that we have user. Now after that, let me open here a user entity. Inside this class, let me add one more field that we have private user role. Let me copy this. Let me add inside the user DTO. After creating a user role, let me open here a pom.xml file. So inside the dependencies, let me add the dependencies for string security and the JWT. First we have the dependency for Spring Security that will use to add authentication, authorization, and the security filters. Second dependency for Spring Security testing. Now after the Spring Security dependencies, let me add here the dependencies for JWT. So as you can see, dependencies for JWT. First we have the JWT API that will use to provide interfaces and the classes to create and sign params JWT. Second dependency for JWT implementation that will use to create and validate JWT. The third dependency that for JWT JSON that will use to enable the JSON serialization. After the JWT dependencies, we have the dependency for Apache Commons that will provide utility functions like strings, numbers, collections. I will share these dependencies in the video description. You can check it out. After adding the dependencies, let me refresh the Maven. After that, let me open here a user repository. So inside this interface, let me create a query for find user by email. The query that we have, find first by email. Inside the argument, it will get an email that is a type of a string, and this query will return an optional user. After the user repository, I'm going to create a new package inside this. So the package name that we have, services. Inside this, let me create a new package with the name JWT. Inside the JWT, I'm going to create a new interface with the name user service. With this, let me create a new Java class with the name user service impl that we have the implementation of user service. After creating this class, let me implement this with user service. On the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have at the rate service to create this class as a service in Spring Boot application. The second annotation I'm going to add here at the rate required ARGS constructor that will use to create the constructor of dependency injection. Let me open here a user service. Inside this interface, let me create the object of user details service. After creating this, let's go to user service impl, and I'm going to implement the method that we have user details service. Now inside this, we have to return here new user details service, where we have to override the function that we have load user by username. Inside the argument, it will get an email. Now inside this, we have to return here a query response that we have created inside a user repository, as you can see. So inside this class, let me inject here a user repository. So it will be a private final user repository. So here we have to call the user repository, and the query that we have, find first by email. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here email. In case if a user not found by email, then we have to return user not found exception with the message user not found. So it will be a or else throw, where we have to throw here new username not found exception with the message user not found. To fix this error, let me implement the user entity with user details. After implementing a user entity with a user details, we have to implement these functions. So as you can see, a function that we have get authorities, where we have to return here list dot of that we have new simple granted authority. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here user role dot name. The second function that we have get username, so this will return an email. Third function that we have is account non-expired, this will return true. Fourth function that we have is account non-logged in, this will return true as well. Second last function that we have is credentials non-expired, this will return true as well. At the last, we have the function with the name is enabled, this will return true. Now you can take a look of a user entity. User DTO, user repository, user service, and the user service implementation. So inside this package, let me create a new package with the name utils. Inside this, I'm going to create a new Java class with the name JWT util. On the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have at the rate component to make this class as a component in our Spring Boot application. Second annotation that we have required ARGS constructor, that will be from Lombok. This annotation will be used to create the constructors of the dependency injection. Inside this class, I'm going to inject here user repository. After the user repository, let me add here the function for get signing in key. So as you can see, a function that we have, get signing in key, that will use to get the secret key used to sign and verify JWT tokens. This will decode a base64 encoded secret key string and create a key that's suitable for JWT signing and verification. The key is hard-coded here, as you can see. I will share the key in the video description. You can check it out. Now after the get signing in key function, I'm going to add the function for extract all claims. So as you can see, a function for extract all claims that will use to extract all claims from a JWT token. It uses JWT library to pass the token and verify the token signature using the get signing in key. As you can see, we are calling it a function that we have get signing in key. It will returns the claims body if verification succeeds. After that, let me add the function for extract claim. So as you can see, a function for extract claim that will use to extract specific claims from a token. After that, I'm going to add the functions for extract username and the extract expiration. As you can see, a function for extract username that will use to extract username subject from the token that typically contains the username of the authenticated user. After that, we have the function for extract expiration that will use to extract the expiration from the token. This function will return the date and time when the token becomes invalid. After that, I'm going to add the functions for is token valid and the is token expired. So as you can see, a function for is token valid. This function validates if a token is valid for a given user. It's checking two conditions, where we have the first condition, that's token username matches the provided user's username. Second condition that we have, token is not expired. After that, we have the function for is token expired that checks if a token has expired. It will return a boolean value. Now after that, I'm going to add the functions for generate token. So as you can see, a function for generate token that will use to generate a new JWT token with the custom claims. After that, we have a convenience method to generate a token with user ID claim. Now at the last, we have the function with the name get logged in user. So as you can see, a function for get logged in user. Let me import the user model. So this function will get the currently authenticated user from QT context. This service provides a complete JWT implementation, including token generation, validation, and claim extraction, along with the user context management. Now you can take a look of a JWT util class. As you can see, a services package. So inside this, let me create a new package with the name Auth. Inside the Auth, let me create a new interface with the name Auth service. With this, I'm going to create a class with the name Auth service impl that we have the implementation of Auth service. So we have to implement this with Auth service. Now on the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have @service to make this class as a service in Spring Boot application. Second annotation that we have required ARGS constructor that will use to create constructor of dependency injection. So inside this, let me inject here user repository. After injecting it, let me open here auth service. So inside this interface, let me create the object of as user with email. So inside the argument, it will get an email that is a type of a string. The return type that we have boolean. Now let me open here auth service implementation, and I'm going to implement the function that we have as user with email. Now inside this function, we have to return here the response of this query that we have find first by email. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here email, and the condition that we have is present if a user found by email then we have to return true. Otherwise, we have to return here false. Now after the auth service, I'm going to create a new package inside this. So the package name that we have, configs. Inside this, let me create a class with the name JWT Authentication Filter. Let me extend this class with once per request filter. Now on the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have @component and the @required args constructor. Inside this class, I'm going to inject here JWT util and the user service. So it will be a private final JWT util. Second, we have private final user service. Now I'm going to implement the function that we have, do filter internal. This is the main function that handles the filter logic. It will run for every incoming HTTP request. Inside this function, I'm going to read the authorization header from the HTTP request. So as you can see, we are getting here the header with the key authorization. Now after that, I'm going to declare a variables for JWT token and the extracted email. So as you can see, a variables for JWT and the user email. Now after that, I'm going to add a if condition where we have to check if the header is missing or does not start with barrier. The request continues without setting any security context. So as you can see, the if condition, let me import string utils from this library. After the if condition, we have to remove the barrier prefix to isolate the JWT token. So as you can see, we are calling it the function that we have substring. Inside this, we have to pass here the index that we have 7. After removing the prefix, we have to extract email from the JWT. So as you can see, a function that we have extract username from JWT util. Inside the argument, we are passing here the JWT. As you can see, the function from JWT util that we have extract username. After extracting it, we have the if condition where we have to check a valid email is extracted and the user is not already authenticated in the current security context. Let me import security context holder that will be from org.springframework.security.core.context. Now inside this if, I'm going to load the user from DB using our custom user service. Let me import user details. So as you can see, a function from user service that we have load user by username that will use to retrieve the user by email from DB. After retrieving the user, we have the if condition where we have to validate the JWT against the user details like signature, expiration. So as you can see, a function we are calling here is token valid. Inside the argument, we are passing here a JWT and the user details. So as you can see, the implementation of is token valid function inside the JWT util class. Inside this if block, I'm going to create an empty security context and prepare a Spring Security Authentication object using user info and the roles. Let me import this security context from org.springframework.security.core.context. After that, I'm going to import here username password authentication token. After that, I'm going to add here request related metadata to the token. Let me import here web authentication details source. After that, I'm going to set here the authentication in the Spring Security context. Now outside of this if block, we have to continue with the rest of filter chain. So it will be a filter chain dot do filter internal. Inside the argument, we have to pass here request and response. With this, I'm going to add the annotation that we have @non-null. This class intercepts every HTTP request before it reaches the controller, checks for a valid JWT token in the authorization header, and sets the security context if the token is valid, allowing the request to be authenticated. Now you can take a look of a JWT authentication filter class. As you can see, a configs package. So inside this, let me create a new Java class with the name web security configuration. On the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have @configuration to mark this class as a Spring configuration class. Second annotation I'm going to add here enable web security. Third annotation I'm going to add here enable method security. Last one, I'm going to add here @required ARGS constructor. Now inside this class, let me inject here JWT authentication filter and the user service. So it will be a private final JWT authentication filter. Second, we have private final user service. After that, let me add here a bean for security filter chain. Let me import the bean, security filter chain, and the HTTP security. Actually, this is a core configuration method for security. Inside this, I'm going to disable CSRF protection. Let me import abstract HTTP configurer. After disabling CSRF, I'm going to allow unauthenticated access to this path that we have /API/auth/static, that for login and register. After that, we have to secure this path that we have /API/user/static, that is only accessed by user role. Let me import this enum. All the other endpoints require authentication. After that, we have to disable HTTP sessions. Each request must include a valid JWT, that we have the stateless behavior. After that, I'm going to set here custom authentication provider, that is the JWT authentication filter before Spring username password authentication filter. Let me import this. With this, let me import stateless. After the custom authentication provider, we have to finalize the security configuration. After the security filter chain bean, I'm going to create a bean for authentication provider. So as you can see, a bean for authentication provider. Let me import this. After that, let me import this. With this, I'm going to create a bean for password encoder. So as you can see, a bean for password encoder. Let me import password encoder and the bcrypt password encoder. The last bean, let me add here for authentication manager. So as you can see, a bean for authentication manager. Let me import the authentication manager. After that, let me import here authentication configuration. Now you can take a look of a web security configuration class. After the web security configuration, let me open here a user model. Now inside this class, I'm going to create a function with the name getUserDTO. So it will be a public return type that we have userDTO. Name of the function that we have getUserDTO. Now inside this, I'm going to create an object of userDTO. After creating the object, we have to set here ID, first name, last name, email, and the user role. We have to get these parameters from this model that we have user. After setting these, we have to run here a userDTO object. Now you can take a look of a user entity. As you can see, a DTOs package. So inside this, let me create a new Java class with the name Signup request. With this, I'm going to create another Java class with the name Authentication Response. Let me open the class that we have Signup request. Now on the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have @data. Inside this class, let me define the parameters that we have private string email. Second, we have private string password. Third, we have private string first name. At the last, we have private string last name. Now after that, let me open here authentication response class. So on the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have @data. Now inside this class, let me define the parameters that we have private string JWT token. Second, we have private string name. After creating these class, let me open here Auth service. So inside this interface, let me create an object with the name create user. Inside the argument, it will get an object of signup request, and the return type of this object that we have user DTO. Let's go to the auth service impl, and I'm going to implement the function that we have create user. Inside this function, let me create an object of user entity, and it will be a new user. After creating the object, let me set here email, and we have to get email from signup request dot get email. Second, I'm going to set here first name. We have to get first name from signup request object. Third, I'm going to set here last name. We have to get last name from signup request. Fourth, I'm going to set here user role that we have user role dot user. At the last, I'm going to set here password. Inside the argument of this, let me call here new beekept password encoder dot encode. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here signup request dot get password. After setting these, let me call here the user repository and the query that we have save. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here a user object. Now on the left side of this, I'm going to create an object of user model, and it will be a created user. After creating this object, we have to return here created user dot get user DTO. Now you can take a look of a auth service simple class. After that, I'm going to create a new Java class with the name authentication request inside the DTOs package. On the top of this class, let me add the annotation that we have @data. Inside this class, we have the parameters private string email. Second, we have private string password. Inside the controllers, let me create a new subpackage with the name auth. Inside the auth, let me create a new Java class with the name auth controller. So on the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have @rest controller. Second annotation, let me add here @request mapping, where a prefix URL for this controller that we have /API/auth. Third annotation, let me add here @required args constructor. Now inside this class, let me inject here user service and the auth service. So it will be a private final auth service. Second, I'm going to inject here private final user service. After injecting these, I'm going to create a function with the name signup user that actually will be the signup user endpoint. So a mapping that we have post URL that we have /signup. After a mapping, I'm going to create a function with the name signup user. So it will be a public response entity. Name of the function that we have signup user. Inside the argument, we have the notation @request body that will accept signup data object that will be mapped with signup request. Inside this function, we have a try and the catch block. The catch will catch the exception in case of API failing. Inside the catch block, we have to run the exception. A status that we have internal server error. Let me import HTTP status and the collections. Inside the try block, I'm going to add here the if condition where we have to check if the user already exists by email in our database. Then we have to return the response with the status follow 9 conflict and the message that we have user already exists. We are calling a function from auth service that we have as user with email. It will return a boolean value. If this function return true, then we have to return this response. If a user not found by email, then we have to create a new user. So as you can see, we are calling a function from auth service that we have create user. Inside the argument of this function, we are passing here a signup request object. This function will return created user object that we have the type of user DTO. After calling this function, we have the if condition where we have to check if a created user is equals to null. Then we have to return the response where we have a status internal server error and the message that we have user creation failed. Please try again later. If a created user not is equals to null, then we have to load user details and generate a JWT token. We are calling a function from user service that we have load user by username. As you can see, the implementation of load user by username function. Inside the argument of this function, we are passing here the email of the created user. This function will return a user details object. Let me import this. After loading the user details, we have to call the function from JWT util that we have generate token. So let me inject JWT util in our auth controller. So it will be a private final JWT util. As you can see, the implementation of generate token function. This function will return a JWT token that is a type of a string. Inside the argument of this function, we are passing here a user details object and the created user ID. After generating the function, we have to return the response. So first, we have to create the object of authentication response. After creating the object, we have to set here JWT token. Inside the argument, we have to pass here this JWT. After setting the token, we have to set here a name that will get from created user object. At the last, we have to return the response where we have a status 201 created and the body that we have authentication response. Now you can take a look of a auth controller. Let's run the Spring Boot application. As you can see, our Spring Boot application started on port 8080. Now I'm going to call Signup user API from Postman. So here, let me add the URL for a Signup user API, a port that we have 8080, a path for create user endpoint that we have /API/auth/signup, mapping that we have post. Now let's go to the body tab. Let me select here raw and then JSON. So here inside this, let me add here a request payload in the type of a JSON where we have the email, password, first name and the last name. Now let's click on the send button. As you can see, a status code we got 201 created. With this, we are getting a response of the API where we have a JWT token and the name of a created user. As you can see, the auth controller. I'm going to duplicate this function that we have sign up user. So a mapping that we have post, URL that we have /login. After the URL, let me update the method name that we have login user. Inside the argument of this function, it has this annotation @request body that will accept authentication request object. In a authentication request class, we have the two parameters, email and the password. Now inside this function, I'm going to update the try block. First, we have to authenticate a user. Let's navigate to the top. So here, I'm going to inject authentication manager. With this, let me inject here user repository. After injecting these, as you can see, the instance of authentication manager. From this, we are calling it the function that we have authenticate. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here new username password authentication token. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here the email and the password of the authentication user. Now after that, we have to load a user. Where from user service, we have to call the function that we have load a user by username. As you can see, the implementation. Inside the argument of this function, we have to pass here authentication request dot get email. After that, we have to call the query from user repository that we have find first by email to load a user from DB by email. So as you can see, a query that we are calling from user repository that we have find first by email. Inside the argument of this query, we have to pass here user details dot get username. On the left side of this query, we have an object of optional user. Let me import here user entity. After retrieving a user from DB, we have the if condition where we have to check if a optional user is present. Then we have to generate a JWT. So as you can see, the if condition where we are checking if optional user is present, then we have to get optional user and save into this object that we have user. After that, we have to call the function from JWT util that we have generate token. Inside the argument of this function, we have to pass here user details and the user ID. We are saving the token into this variable that we have JWT. After generating a token, we have to create an object of authentication response. First, we have to set here JWT token. After that, we have to set here a name of a logged in user and we have to return the response with the status 200. In case if a user is empty, then we have to return the response with the status not found and the body where we have a message user not found. Now at the last, we have to catch here a multiple exceptions like bad credentials, disabled, user not found and the exception. With these, we have to return exception message with the concerning HTTP status, like for bad credential exception that we have unauthorized, for disabled we have forbidden, user not found exception that we have not found, and the exception that we have internal server error. Now you can take a look of an auth controller. Let's navigate to the Postman and let's test the API. Let me duplicate this tab, update the path that we have /API/auth/login, mapping that we have post. Let me add the request payload in the form of a JSON where we have a email and the password. Before calling the API, let me run the Spring Boot application. As you can see, our Spring Boot application started successfully. Let's navigate to the Postman. Let's click on the send button to call the endpoint. So as you can see, a status code we got 200 OK. With this, we are getting here a JWT and the name. Let me open here a terminal. So first, I'm going to install JS cookie and the XES package in React application. So the command that we have npm install js-cookie and the XES. So as you can see, the packages are installed successfully. Inside the src, let me create a new folder with the name environment. So inside this, let me create a new file with the name xesinstance.jsx. Inside this, let me initialize here XES. We have to import here this package that we have XES. So as you can see, a base URL of our Spring Boot application. We have to export here instance. After this file, let me open here common.jsx. So inside this, let me define a variable with the name token. After that, I'm going to add here the function that we have save token. This function will get a token inside the argument. Inside this function, we have to call the function from cookies that we have set. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here a key that we have token and the value that we are getting inside the argument. So here on the top, let me add the import for cookies. After that, let me open here auth service. So inside this, I'm going to add the functions for sign up and the login, where we have to call the endpoints from Spring Boot application. So first function that we have sign up, so it will be a async function inside the argument. It will get a sign up DTO object. Inside this function, we have a try and the catch block. Inside the try block, we have to call the endpoint from a Spring Boot application, where a mapping that we have post. Inside this, we have to define here a URL that we have API/auth/signup. After the URL, we have to pass here a sign up DTO object. In case of exception, we have to catch here inside the catch block and throw it. Second function that we have login. So this function will get a login DTO object inside the argument. Inside this function, we have to call the endpoint from a Spring Boot application inside the try block, where mapping that we have post URL that we have API/auth/login. After the URL, we have to pass here login DTO object and return the response after getting it. On the top, let me import here XES instance. As you can see, the import of XES instance. Now after the auth service, let me create a new folder inside the src. So the package name that we have user, inside a user, I'm going to create a subpackage with the name dashboard. Inside this, let me create a new file with the name dashboard.jsx. Inside this file, let me set up this component, where a component name that we have dashboard. Inside this, we have the return statement, where we have h1 tag with the caption dashboard works. And we have to export here a dashboard component. So it will be a export default dashboard. After creating this component, let me open here app.jsx. Let me duplicate this route. Now I'm going to register a dashboard component as a routing, where a path that we have /dashboard. On this path, we have to load here a component that we have dashboard. After creating and setting up a dashboard component, let me open here a sign up component. So as you can see, a function that we have handle submit. From this function, we have to call the function from auth service to call the endpoint. Before updating this function, let me open here a terminal. Let me add here the command to install notice stack. Let's hit enter. As you can see, the package installed successfully. Let me kill the PowerShell. After installing a notice tag, let me open here main.jsx file. Let me wrap the app tag with snack bar provider. Now as you can see a function that we have sign up. So inside this, let me add the instance of use snack bar. We have to import this from notice stack. After initializing this hook, I'm going to update this function that we have handle submit, where we have a try catch and the finally block. So inside the try block, we have to call the function from auth service that we have sign up. Inside the argument of this function, we have to pass here a form data object that has email, password, first name and the last name. After calling the endpoint, we have to check here response status. First status is 201. Then we have to extract response data. After extracting it, we have to call the function from common.jsx that we have save token. Inside the argument, we have to pass here response data.token. After saving a token, we have to navigate a user to a dashboard page. So as you can see, the instance that we have navigate from use navigate. Inside the argument, we have to pass here a path for dashboard component that we have /dashboard. At the last, we have to show here a snack bar where we have a message welcome and the response data.name. After the try block, we have a catch block where we have to catch an error. Inside this, we have the if condition where we have to check error.response.status 49. Then we have to show a snack bar with a caption user already exists. Otherwise, we have to show here sign up failed. At the last, we have a finally block that we'll use to set the loading state value to false. After sign up component, we have to call a login endpoint. So let me copy this function. Let's go to the login component. Let me replace this function with this. So inside the try block of this function, we have to call the function from auth service that we have login. Inside the argument, we have to pass here a form data object. After calling the API, we have to check here a response status. If the status is 200, then we have to show a snack bar. With this, we have to navigate a user to a dashboard page and save the token to the cookies. Inside the catch block, let me remove here if and the else condition. Now we have to show here a snack bar with the caption sign in field. Now you can take a look of a login component. And this is a sign up component. Now let's navigate to the browser and let's test the API. Let me open here the inspect. Let's go to the console. As you can see, there we got snack bar is not defined. Let me import here a snack bar inside main.jsx file. So as you can see, the import of snack bar provider from notice stack. First, I'm going to call here a sign up API. Let's click on the sign up button. As you can see, a snack bar we got sign up failed. Let me open here the inspect. Let's go to the network tab. Okay, we are getting here a course error. Let's fix this issue. So let me open here an auth controller inside the Spring Boot application. On the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have at the rate cross origin. Here we have a value static. Let me rerun the Spring Boot application. Let's call the endpoint again. As you can see, a snack bar we got. With this, it's navigating us to a dashboard page. Inside the network tab, you can see a status code we got 201 created. Inside the response tab, we are getting here a JWT and the name of a created user. After sign up API, let me call here a login endpoint where email address. Let me add here john@gmail.com. Password that we have John. Now let's click on the sign in button. As you can see, a network tab where we have a status code 200 OK. Inside the response tab, we are getting here a response of the API, but it's not navigating us to a dashboard page and not showing here a snack bar. Let me check what is the issue. Let me check the import of this function on the top. Okay, we have not imported this function. Let me import this. With this, we have to initialize a use snack bar hook. So let me copy the hook from sign up component. Let me add inside the login component. We have to import here a use snack bar from notice stack. Let's call the login endpoint again. As you can see, a snack bar we got, and it's navigating us to a dashboard page. Let me open here common.jsx file inside the utility package. Inside this file, let me add here the function for get token and the remove token. This function will get a token from cookies, and this function will remove a token from cookies. After that, let me open here a terminal. Let me write here the command to install JWT decode package. Let's hit enter. As you can see, a JWT decode package installed successfully. Let me close the PowerShell. So here I am going to add the function for decode token and the is token valid. Inside a decode token function, we are calling it a function that we have get token. After getting a token, we have the if condition. If a token is empty, then we have to return here a null. After calling a function, we have a try and the catch block. Inside the try block, we have to call the function from JWT decode. Let me import this. As you can see, the import. Inside the argument of this function, we have to pass here a token that is a type of a string, and we have to return this. A catch block will catch the error and return null with an error message in the console. Now at the last, we have a function with the name is token valid. Inside this function, we have to call the function that we have decode token. After calling the function, we have the condition where we have to check here decoded token itself with its expiration. Then we have to return here false. After the if condition, we are converting the decoded token expiry to milliseconds. After converting it, we are checking here a validity of the token. If a date.now less than an expiry date, then we have to return true. Now you can take a look of a common.jsx file. After that, let me open here a header component inside the pages. So inside this function, I'm going to add the hooks for use navigate and a use location. Let me import here a use navigate hook. With this, I'm going to import here use location. After these hooks, let me add here the use state for is user logged in. That will be a type of a boolean. Let me import here a use state. After that, we have a function with the name handle sign out. Inside this function, we are calling here the instance of use navigate that we have navigate. Inside the argument, we have to define here a path for a login page that we have /login. After navigating a user, we have to remove a token from cookies by calling a function from common.jsx file. Let me import this. After this function, let me add here a use effect hook that will set this use state value to true when a token is valid. So as you can see, a use effect hook. Let me import this. We are calling a function from common.jsx file that we have is token valid. This function will return a boolean value. After calling this function, we have to call here a use state that we have set is user logged in. Inside the argument, we have to pass here is logged in. This will hold a boolean value like true and false. Now inside the dependency array, we have to pass here a location. This use effect will mount when a path or URL has changed. After that, let me add here a use effect for auto logout mechanism on the base of token expiry. Now after that, inside the return statement of the header function, I'm going to add here a condition where we are checking is user logged in use state. If it's true, then we have to show these nav links. Where first we have a dashboard, second we have post poll, third we have my polls. At the last we have a logout. On the click of logout nav link, we are calling a function that we have handle sign out to remove a token and navigate a user to a login page. If the state has false, then we have to show these nav links. Where first we have a login, second we have register. Now you can take a look of a header component. Let me create a new folder inside the services. So a folder name that we have poll. Inside this, let me create a new file with the name poll.jsx. Now after that, I have moved a user folder to the pages package. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. Inside a user package, let me create a new folder with the name create poll. Third folder that we have view my poll. Last we have view poll details. Inside this package, let me create a new file with the name create poll. .jsx. In this folder, let me create a new file with the name viewmypolls.jsx. Let me update this folder name. That actually will be a view-poll-details. So inside this, let me create a new file with the name viewpoll-details.jsx. Let me set up this component where we have a function name create poll. Inside this, we have the return statement with a caption create poll works, and we have to export here create poll. With this, I'm going to setting up this component that we have view my polls. Let me update the function name, and we have to export this. The caption that we have view my polls works. At the last, let me setting up this component that we have view poll details. We have to export this, and the caption that we have view poll details works. After setting up these components, let me open here app.jsx. Let me duplicate this route, update the path that we have /poll/create. On this path, we have to load here an element that is a create poll. Let me import this. After create poll, I'm going to just here view my polls component. So a path that we have my polls. At the last, let me just here view poll details component. So the path that we have /poll/:id/view. Let me verify the path of these components with the header component. So for a dashboard nav link, we have a path /dashboard. For a post poll, we have a path /poll/create. For my polls, we have a path /my polls. Let's navigate to the browser. As you can see, we are getting here an error with a dashboard import. Let me update this. Let me replace this import with this. Now as you can see, error removed. Let me log in here a user. Before calling the endpoint, let me open here the inspect. Let's go to the network tab. Now let's click on the sign in button. As you can see, a snack bar we got with this is navigating us to a dashboard page. Still we can see here a non-logged in user nav bar. So let me check here the request where response we got with the key JWT token and the name. Let me verify the key inside the login component. We are extracting here response data. After that, we have to call the function from common.jsx that we have save token. Inside the argument, we have to pass here response data dot JWT token instead of token. Let me update this inside the signup component as well. So it will be a response data dot JWT token. Let's save this. Let's go back to the browser. Let me log in here a user again. Let's click on the sign in button. Now we can see a nav bar for logged in user where we have a nav links dashboard. Second we have post poll. Third we have my polls. At the last we have a nav link with a caption logout. Let's click on this and it's navigating us to a sign in page. As you can see, the entities package. So inside this, let me create a new Java class with the name poll. Second we have options. Inside the poll class, I'm going to add here the notation that we have @entity to make this class as a table in Spring Boot application. Second annotation that we have @data. Now inside this class, let me define the field for poll entity. So the first that we have private long ID that will be the primary key for this entity. After that, we have a field for question, posted date and the expired at. The data type of a question field that we have string, and for posted date and expired at we have a data type date. Now after that, I'm going to add the field for options that is the relation with this entity. So as you can see, a type that we have list of options. On the top of this field, we have the annotation @many to one, like one poll has many options, and we have to map this with poll. Now after that, let me set up here options class, where first we have the field for ID that will be a primary key for this entity. On the top of this, let me add here the annotation that we have @entity. Second, we have @data. After that, I'm going to add here the field for title. After the title, we have a field with a name, poll. So as you can see, the annotation that we have @many to one, like many option as one poll. Second annotation that we have @join column, where we have a name of the column, poll_id. Third, we have on delete. At the last, we have a @JSON ignore. Now after creating the entities, let me create a new class inside the DTOs package. So the first class that we have, poll DTO. Second, we have options DTO. Now on the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have @data. Now inside the options DTO class, let me add here the parameters that we have: private long ID, private string title. At the last, we have private long poll ID. After the options DTO, let me open here poll DTO. So on the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have @data. Now inside this class, let me add here the parameters that we have: private long ID, private string question, private date posted date, private date expired at, and a private list of string that we have options. Now after the DTOs, let me create a new interface inside the repositories package. So the first interface that we have, poll repository. Second, we have options repository. Let me extend this interface with JPA repository. Inside this, we have to pass here options entity. After the entity, we have to pass here a data type of a primary key that we have long. On the top of this interface, let me add here the annotation that we have @repository. After setting up an options repository, let me open here poll repository. So on the top of this, let me add here the annotation that we have @repository, and we have to extend this interface with JPA repository. Inside this, let me pass here poll entity. With this, we have to pass here a data type of a primary key that we have long. First, let me open here poll and the options entities. So inside the poll entity, let me add here one more field with a name, total vote count. That will be a type of integer, and we have to initialize this with 0. After that, let me open here options entity. So inside this, I'm going to add the field with the name vote count. That is a type of integer, and we have to initialize this with 0. Let me add this field inside the options DTO as well. After that, we have to update here poll DTO, where we have a field with the name total vote count. After that, let me create a new package inside the controllers. So the package name that we have, user. Inside this, let me create a new Java class with the name poll controller. Now on the top of this, let me add here the annotation that we have @REST controller to make this class as a controller in Spring Boot application. Second annotation I'm going to add here @required ARGS constructor. Third annotation I'm going to add here @request mapping, where we have a prefix path for this controller /API/user. Last annotation I'm going to add here @cross origin with the value static. After this controller, I'm going to create a package inside the services. So the package name that we have, user. Inside the user, I'm going to create a new interface with the name poll service. With this, I'm going to create a new Java class with the name poll service implementation. Let me implement this class with poll service. Inside this class, I'm going to inject here JWT util. With this, let me inject here poll repository. Third, we have options repository. On the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have @service to make this class as a service in Spring Boot application. Second annotation I'm going to add here @required ARGS constructor. After setting up a poll service, let me open here pom.xml. Inside the dependencies tag, let me add here the dependency for Spring Boot starter mail. After adding the dependency, let me refresh here the maven. Let me close this file. Inside the poll service impl, let me inject here Java mail sender. As you can see, the import. Now after that, Let me open here application.properties file. Inside this file, I'm going to add the configuration for send email. So first we have mail host and the port. A port that we have 587, a host that we have smtp.gmail.com. After this, we have to define here a username and the password of mail. Let me get the username first. I'm going to generate a password from Gmail. Let's click on this button. Let me search here app passwords. First, we have to own the two-step verification, then the app password will enable. So here inside this input, let me define the app name that we have, all application. Let's click on this button. As you can see, our generated app password. So let me copy this. Let me add the generated password inside our Spring Boot application. We have to remove this space. After username and the password, we have two more configuration, that for SMTP auth. Second, we have start TLS enable with the value true. After adding the configuration, let me open here poll controller. Inside this class, let me inject here poll service. First, let me open here poll entity. So inside this, I'm going to add here one more property with a name is expired. That is a type of a boolean and it's by default false. With this, let me open here poll DTO. Inside this class, let me add here a few more parameters with the name is expired. That is a type of a boolean, user ID, type of long, username, type of string, options DTO. That is a type of list of options DTO. At the last, we have a voted. That is a type of a boolean. Inside the entities, let me create a new Java class with the name vote. On the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have at the rate entity. Second, we have at the rate data. Inside this class, I'm going to add here a parameters where first we have the primary key ID, that is a type of long. On the top of this parameter, we have the annotation at the rate ID and the generated value where we have a strategy generation type dot identity. Second parameter or field that we have posted date, that is the type of a date. Third parameter that we have a relation with the user, like one user has many votes. Second addition that we have at the rate join column where we have a column name user underscore ID. Second last field that we have options, like one option has many votes. At the last we have a field with the name poll, like one poll has many votes. Second addition that we have at the rate join column where we have a column name poll underscore ID. Now you can take a look of a vote entity. After a vote entity, I'm going to create a new Java class with the name vote DTO inside the DTOs package. So on the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have at the rate data. Now inside this class, I'm going to add here the parameters for vote DTO. So the parameters are ID, type of long, option ID, type of long, poll ID, type of long, posted by, type of long. After creating a vote DTO, let me open here vote entity. Inside this class, let me create here a public function with the name get vote DTO. So the return type that we have vote DTO, name of function that we have get vote DTO. Inside this function, let me create here an object of vote DTO. After creating an object, we have to set here ID posted by, option ID and the poll ID, and we have to get these from the vote class. At the last, we have to return here vote DTO. After this, I'm going to create a new interface with the name vote repository inside the repositories package. On the top of this, let me add here the annotation that we have at the rate repository to make this interface as a repository in Spring Boot application. So we have to extend this repository with JPA repository to override some built-in functions like find all, find by ID, delete by ID. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here vote entity and the data type of a primary key that we have long. Inside this interface, I'm going to define here a queries. First we have a query exists by poll ID and user ID. That is a type of a boolean. Inside the argument of this query, we have to pass here poll ID and the user ID. That we have a type of a long. Second query I'm going to define here exists by poll ID and user ID and options ID. That is a type of a boolean. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here poll ID, user ID and the option ID. After creating a vote repository, let me open here options entity. So inside this class, I'm going to create here a relation with vote list. Like one option has many votes, we have to map this with options and cascade type all. After updating an options entity, let me open here options DTO. So here inside this class, I'm going to add here a few more parameters. Where first we have user voted this option, that is a type of a boolean. Second we have vote DTOs, that is a type of list of vote DTO. So here inside this class, let me create a function with the name get options DTO. So here I'm going to import options DTO, options entity. So a function name that we have get option DTO, it will be a public function. The return type of this function that we have options DTO. Inside the argument, it will get options entity object, user ID, that is a type of a long, poll ID, that is a type of long. Now inside this function, I am going to create an object of options DTO. After creating an object, we have to set here ID, title, poll ID and the vote count. Inside the argument of these, we have to pass here options.get ID, options.get title, options.get poll.get ID and the get vote count. After that, we have to set here user voted this option. Inside the argument of this, we have to call the query from vote repository that we have exist by poll ID and user ID and option ID. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here poll ID, user ID and the options.get ID. So on the top of this function, let me inject here vote repository. So it will be a private final vote repository. As you can see, a query inside a vote repository where it's getting poll ID, user ID and the option ID. It will return a boolean value. After setting these, we have to return here options DTO. Now as you can see, a function get option DTO that has the implementation to convert the options entity to DTO. Now with this, I'm going to create a function where we have to write the functionality to convert poll entity to DTO. So the function name that we have get poll DTO in service. Inside the argument, it will get an object of poll entity. Let me import this. This function will be a public and the return type of this function that we have poll DTO. Let me import this. Now inside this function, we have to get the logged in user by calling a function from JWT util, a function that we have get logged in user. As you can see, the implementation, we are saving the response of this function into this object that we have logged in user. Let me import here user entity. After getting a logged in user, I am going to create here an object of poll DTO. After creating an object, we have to set here a few parameters. First we have ID, second we have question, third we have expired at, fourth we have expired, fifth we have posted date. To set the values into these, we have to get them from poll object. As you can see, a parameter that we have poll DTO dot set expired. First we are checking here expired at not is equals to null and poll dot get expired at before new date. Both are written true. Then we have to set here true, otherwise false. After that, we have to set here options DTOs. Inside the argument of this, we are calling a built-in function string on this parameter that we have poll dot get options. Inside the argument of the map, we have to call the function get option DTO. Inside the argument of this function, we have to pass here options object. With this, we have to pass here user ID and the poll ID. At the last, we have to collect all the documents and we have to set the list into this parameter that we have options DTO. That is a type of list of options DTO. After setting option DTOs, we have to set here total vote count. We have to get total vote count from poll object. After setting this, we have to get poll owner user object name that we have poll owner. Into this object, we have to save here poll.getUser. Let me open here poll entity. So inside this class, I'm going to create a relation with the user. Like one user has many poll. Second annotation that we have @join column, where we have a column name user_id. Now after getting a poll owner, I'm going to add here if and the else condition, where we have to set the username. So the if condition where we are checking if a logged in user not is equals to null, and poll owner dot get id dot is equals to logged in user dot get id. Then we have to set here a username u. Otherwise we have to set here poll owner dot get first name plus poll owner dot get last name. After setting a username, we have to set here user id that we will get from poll owner dot get id. Now at the last, we have to set here voted. First we have to check here logged in user. If it's not null, then we have to set here voted. Inside this, we have to call the query from vote repository that we have exist by poll id and user id. Inside the argument of this query, we have to pass here poll.getID and the logged in user dot get id. This query will return a boolean value. At the last, we have to return here poll DTO. So this function get poll DTO in service as the implementation to convert the poll entity to DTO. Now you can take a look of a poll service implementation. Let me open here poll service. So inside this interface, let me define here a method with a name post poll. Inside the argument, it will get an object of poll DTO. Let me put this, and the return type of this method that we have poll DTO. After adding this method, let me open here poll service implementation. So here inside this class, let me implement a method that we have post poll. Let me move this function on the top. Inside this function, first we have to get a logged in user. So we have to call a function from JWT util that we have get logged in user. As you can see, the implementation of a get logged in user function. On the left side of this, we have an object of user. After getting a logged in user, I'm going to add here an if condition where we have to check here if a user is not is equals to null. Then we have to move inside the if block. If a user not found, then we have to return here null. Inside this if block, let me create here an object of poll entity. After creating an object, we have to set here question posted date expired at user and the total vote count. We have to get question from poll DTO, a posted date that we have a new date expired at we have to get from poll DTO. Set user we have to get from this object, and a total vote count that we have 0. After setting these, let me call here poll repository, and the query that we have save. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here an object of poll entity. Now on the left side of this, I'm going to get here an object of poll entity. So the object name that we have created poll. After creating a poll, we have to create an object of list of options. After creating an object, I'm going to add here a for loop where we have to get option title from poll DTO dot get options. Inside this loop, I'm going to create an object of options. After creating an object, we have to set here title, poll, and the vote count. So we have to get title from option title. After that, we have to set here poll that will get from this object, and we have to set here vote count that will be a 0, and we have to add this option into this array list that we have options. After adding all the option to this array list, I'm going to call the query from options repository that we have save all. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here options array list. On the left side of this query, we have an object of list of options. After saving all the options, let me call here the setter from poll entity that we have set options. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here saved options. After setting the options to poll entity, let me call a function from poll repository that we have saved, and we have to pass here poll entity. After saving the options in poll table, I'm going to add here an if condition where we have to check here if a created poll.getID not is equals to null. Then we have to write the functionality to send email to a posted user. where inside this if condition, I'm going to add here try and the catch block. So as you can see, a try and the catch block. A catch block will catch messaging exception, and we have to print error message in the console. Now inside the try block, I'm going to create an object of my message. After that, let me create an object of my message helper. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here my message object. With this, we have a multi-part flag true. After creating an object of my message helper, we have to set here from to and the subject. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here a from email. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here user dot get email. In the subject, we have to hardcode this subject. With this, we have to set here a text. First, we have a first name of a post-it poll user. With this, we have the hardcode text. We are giving here a question and the post-it date as well. After setting a text, we have to call the function from Java mail sender. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here my message. At the last, we have a log with the caption mail sent to this email. Now, outside of this if condition, I'm going to return here this function that we have get poll DTO in service. Inside the argument of this function, we have to pass here created poll object. Now you can take a look of a post service implementation class. As you can see, the interface for a poll service. So inside this, I'm going to add here a method with the name delete poll. Inside the argument, it will get an ID that is a type of a long, and the return type of this method that we have void. After a poll service, let me open here poll service implementation class. So here inside this class, I'm going to implement a function with the name delete poll. Inside this function, we have to call the query from poll repository that we have delete by ID. Inside the argument of this query, we have to pass here an ID that we are getting in the argument of this function. After setting up a poll service implementation class, let me open here poll controller. So here inside this class, first I'm going to create a function for post a poll. So a mapping of the API post. So the URL of the endpoint that we have /API/user as a prefix path for this controller /poll for a post poll API. After a mapping, I'm going to create a function with the name post poll. So as you can see, a function with the name post poll. Inside the argument of this function, we have the annotation @request body that will accept poll DTO object as a request payload of this endpoint. Let me import here poll DTO. Inside this, we have to call the function from poll service that we have post poll. Inside the argument of this function, we have to pass here poll DTO that we have the request payload of this endpoint. This function will return a poll DTO as a response, and we have to save the response into this object that we have create poll DTO. After getting the method response, we have if and the else condition. Inside the if, we have to check here if a created poll DTO not is equals to null. Then we have to return the response with the status 201 created, and inside the body we have to pass here created poll DTO object. In case if a created poll DTO is equals to null, then we have to return the response with the status not found. After setting up the function for post poll, let me add here the function for delete poll, where we have a mapping delete URL that we have /poll/id. We have to get the ID from URL. After a mapping, we have a function with the name delete poll. Inside the argument, we have to get an ID that is a type of a long. With this, we have the notation @path variable. Inside this function, we have to call the function from poll service delete poll. In the argument of this function, we have to pass here an ID of the poll that we are getting from URL. After calling the function, we have to run the response with the status 200 OK and null inside the body. Now you can see the flow of post and delete poll endpoint, where from this controller, we are calling a functions from poll service that we have post poll and delete poll, and the logic of these functions inside a poll service implementation class. Let's run the Spring Boot application. As you can see, our Spring Boot application started successfully. Now let me open here a Postman. First, I'm going to add here the curl to register a new user. So let me get the request curl. Let me copy this. Let me paste here inside this input. So as you can see, a path that we have /API/auth/signup mapping that we have get. Now let's go to the body tab. As you can see, a request payload in the form of a JSON where we have the parameters, email, password, first name and the last name. Let me get the email from temp mail. So let me search here temp mail. Let me copy this. Let me add here on the place of the value of email parameter. Password, let me add here 12345. Now let's click on the send button. As you can see, a user created successfully and we are getting here a JWT token. After calling a signup endpoint, I'm going to call post poll endpoint. So let me get the request curl. Let me paste here inside this input. So as you can see, the URL that we have /API/user/poll mapping that we have post inside the body. We have a request payload in the form of a JSON where we have a question expired at and the options parameter options. We have the string array list. With this, let's go to the headers tab. So here I'm going to replace this string with our JWT token. Let me get the token from this request. Let me replace here. Now let's click on the send button. As you can see, we got the API response with the status 201 created and we are getting here the API response body as well. As you can see, the log we got mail sent to this email. Now at the last, I'm going to call the endpoint to delete a poll. So let me copy this curl, open here a new tab. Let me paste here the curl. So a mapping that we have, delete URL that we have /API/user/poll/poll ID. As you can see, the poll ID that we have one. I'm going to delete this posted poll. Let me add here the JWT token. Now let's click on the send button. As you can see, the status we got 200 OK. As you can see, a poll service. Inside this interface, I'm going to define here the method with the name get all polls. The return type of this method that we have list of poll DTO. Second method I'm going to define here get my polls. The return type of this method that we have list of poll DTO. After defining the methods in poll service, let me open here poll service implementation class. So here inside this class, let me implement the methods. So the methods are get all polls and get my polls. Inside this function, we have to return list of poll DTO. Where first I'm going to call the query from poll repository. So the query that we have find all dot stream method that converts the collection to a stream for processing. This query will get all poll entities from the database. After the stream method, we have a method sorted that sorts the poll by their posted date in descending order like newest first. After the sorted method, we have a method map that converts each poll entity to a poll DTO using a helper method. As you can see, the implementation of get poll DTO in service helper method. At the last, we have a method collect that collects the stream back into a list. So let me copy this return statement. Let me add here inside this function. So on the top of this return statement, I'm going to call the function from JWT util that we have get logged in user. After getting a logged in user, I'm going to add here the if condition where we have to check if a user not is equals to null. Then we have to return here a poll DTO list. Otherwise, we have to throw here entity not found exception with an exception message user not found. Inside this if condition, I'm going to update the query that we have find all by user ID. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here user dot get ID. Let me create this method inside the poll repository. So this method will get an ID that is the type of a long, and this query will return a list of poll entity. Let me import here list from java.util. After setting up a poll service implementation class, let me open here poll controller. After this function, I'm going to define the function for get all polls. So a mapping that we have get URL that we have /polls. Inside this function, we have to call the function from poll service that we have get all polls, and we have to call this function inside the argument of this status that we have okay from response entity. After that, let me define here the function for get my polls. So inside this function, I'm going to call the interface method that we have get my polls. So a mapping that we have get URL that we have /my polls. Now you can see the flow of get all polls and get my polls endpoint. From this controller, we are calling here the method from poll service, and this is the implementation of get all polls and get my polls function. Let me run the Spring Boot application. As you can see, our Spring Boot application started successfully. Now we have to call these endpoints from Postman. First, I'm going to generate the JWT token by hitting login endpoint. So let me copy this token. Let's go to the second tab. As you can see, the URL that we have /API/user/polls mapping that we have get inside the headers tab. Let me update this string with the JWT. Now let's click on the send button. As you can see, the status we got 200 OK. With this, we are getting here the response body where we have a list of poll DTO. After that, I'm going to call get my polls endpoint. So the URL that we have /API/user/my polls mapping that we have get, and inside the headers tab, let me update the string with a JWT. Let's click on the send button. As you can see, the response we got with the status 200 OK. So let me open here the terminal. Let me get the command to install the date pickers of Material UI. So let me search here Material UI date pickers. Let's go to the quick start page. From this page, I'm going to copy this command that we have npm install @MUI/x date pickers. Let's run this command. With a date picker, we have to install here djs. At the last, we have to install here moment. After installing these dependencies, let me close this PowerShell. Let me open here exist instance.jsx file. After creating the instance of the exist, I'm going to add here a request interceptor. Inside this method, we have the callback parameters, config and the error. Inside the config, we have to get the token from common.jsx file. After getting a token from cookies, we have the if condition, if token found. Then we have to set here the header with the key authorization and the value barrier space token. And we have to return here the config. Inside the error, we have to return here promise.reject with an error message. Let me import this function on the top. After adding request interceptor, let me open here poll service. Inside this file, I'm going to create the functions for post poll, get my polls, get all polls, and delete poll by ID. So let me copy the functions from auth service. Let me add inside the poll service. So on the top, we have the import of exist instance. After that, I'm going to update the function name that we have post poll. Inside the argument, it will get poll DTO object. Inside this function, we have a try and the catch block. Inside the try block, we have to call here exist instance, and the mapping that we have post URL that we have /API/user/poll. After the URL, we have to pass here poll DTO object, and we have to return the response after getting it. The catch block will catch the exception and throw the error. With this, I'm going to setting up the function for get all polls. So the mapping that we have get URL that we have /API/user/polls. With this, I'm going to setting up the function for get my polls. So the function name that we have get my polls. Mapping that we have get URL that we have /API/user/my-polls. Now at the last, I'm going to setting up the function for delete poll by ID. So inside the argument of this function, it will get an ID that is a type of a number. Inside this function, we have to call here the mapping delete. Inside the argument, we have to define here the URL that we have /API/user/poll/ID. Let me add here the ID. and we have to add here the backtick. After setting up the poll service, let me open here create poll component. Inside this function, I'm going to define the use state for create poll, where we have a use state name, form data. The form fields are question, that is the type of an empty string, options, that is the type of an empty array, expired at, that is by default null. Let me import here the use state from React. With this, I'm going to define the use state for loading. After the loading use state, let me define here the hooks for use snack bar and the use navigate. Let me put here use snack bar from notice stack and the use navigate from React router DOM. Now inside the return statement, I'm going to add here the backdrop tag that will use to show the loader on the screen when loading has true. So let me get the backdrop tag from auth components. So we have to import here backdrop and the circular progress from material UI. Now after that, let me copy the function from login component that we have handle submit. Let me add here inside the create poll component. So inside this function, we have the method e.preventDefault that will not reload the page while submitting the form. After that, we are calling here the use state set loading with the value true. With this, we have a try catch and the finally block. Inside the try block, we will call a create poll endpoint. For now, I'm going to comment this. Inside the catch block, we are showing here an error snack bar with the caption getting error while creating poll, and the finally block that we use to set the loading value to false. Now you can take a look of a create poll component. So here on the top of the backdrop tag, I'm going to add the HTML code to create a create poll form. Let me copy the code from login component. I'm going to copy this theme provider tag. Let me add here on the top of this backdrop tag a first tag that we have theme provider. Inside this, we have the tag for container. Inside the container, we have the tag for CSS baseline. After that, we have the tag for box. Inside the box, we have the tag for avatar. Inside this avatar tag, I'm going to update this icon that we have, how to vote icon. After the avatar tag, we have the tag for typography, where we have a caption of the form, create poll. After the typography tag, we have the tag for box. On this box tag, we have the event on submit. On this event, we are calling it the function that we have handle submit that we'll use to call the endpoint from server. Inside this box tag, we have the following fields for poll. So I'm going to remove here these text fields, button and the grid. Now inside this box tag, first we have the text field for question. So as you can see, the props value form data dot question that will use to set the default value of this use state. Second, we have on change event. On this event, we have to clone this input value to the use state form data. After the question text field, we have to get the options of the poll. So the tag that we have autocomplete. Inside this tag, we have the props value form data dot options. Second, we have on change event. On this event, we have to clone the options value to the use state set form data. The last input that for date picker, where we have a props value form data dot expired at an event that we have on change. On this event, we have to clone the expired at value to the use state form data. After these inputs, we have the tag for button to submit the form. So as you can see, a tag for a button. On this, we have the property disabled, where we are checking here the values of form data dot question, options and the expired at. If any of them null, then we have to disable the button. Between this tag, we are checking here the loading state value. If loading has true, then we have to show here the loader. Otherwise, we have the caption of the button post poll. Now on the top, I'm going to add here the imports of material UI components that we are using in our create poll form. So as you can see, the imports, let me open here a login component. I'm going to copy this object default theme. Let me add here after the imports. After creating a form, I'm going to update this function where inside the try block, I'm going to create here an object where we have a key value pairs, question, options and expired at. We have to extract them from form data use state. After creating an object, I'm going to call the function form poll service that we have post poll. Let me import this manually on the top. As you can see, the import of post poll function from poll service. Inside the argument of this function, we have to pass here object. We are saving the API response into this variable response. After getting the response, we have to check here a response status. If a status is 201, then we have to navigate a user to a dashboard page. With this, we have to show here increase snack bar with a caption poll posted successfully. Now you can take a look of a create poll component. After that, let me open here main.jsx file. So here I'm going to wrap app tag with the localization provider tag. On this tag, we have the props date adapter with the value adapter date.js. Let me shift this app tag inside the localization provider tag. So here on the top, I'm going to add the imports of localization provider and the adapter date.js. Let's navigate to the browser. As you can see, a form for a create poll. Let's fill the form where we have a question. Options that we have Java, C, JS, Python. At the last, let me select here the expiration. Let's click on this button to post poll. As you can see, we got an error snack bar with the caption getting error while creating poll. Let me open here the inspect. Let's go to the network tab. Let's call the endpoint again. We got here the status course error. Let's resolve this error. So let me open here the Spring Boot application. Let me verify the cross origin annotation on the top of the poll controller where we have a value static. After that, let me open here a security configuration class. Inside this bean, we have to add here request matches where we have to allow here all HTTP method options to permit all. Let me rerun the Spring Boot application. As you can see, our Spring Boot application started successfully. Now I'm going to call the endpoint again. Now this time we got poll posted successfully and the status code 201 created, and it also navigates us to a dashboard page. As you can see, a component for create poll. From this component, let me copy this use state for loading. With the use state, let me copy this use snack bar hook. Let me add inside the component of view my polls. Let me import here use state and the use snack bar from notice stack. With this, I'm going to define the use state for polls. After defining the use states, let me copy the function from create poll. So the function that we have handle submit. Let me copy this function. Let me add inside this component. So first I'm going to update the function name that we have fetch data. So it will be a use callback function. From the argument of this function, let me remove this event. Let me add here an empty dependency array. Now inside this function, first we have to call here the use state set loading to set the value true. Inside the try block, we have to call the function from poll service that we have get my polls. Let me remove this object from the argument. Now we have to import this function from poll service. After getting the API response, we have to check here the status. If a status is 200, then we have to call here the use state set polls. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here response.data. Inside the catch block, we have to show here an error snack bar with the caption getting error while fetching polls. And the finally block that will use to set the loading state value to false. We have to pass here increase snack bar inside the dependency array. Now we have to call this function inside the use effect hook. Let me import here use effect. After calling get my polls endpoint, I'm going to setting up the function for delete poll. Let me get the function from create poll component. Let me add here after the use effect hook. First, I'm going to update the function name that we have handle delete poll. Inside the argument, it will get poll ID. Inside this function, first we have to set here loading state value true. Inside the try block, we have to call the function from poll service that we have delete poll. Inside the argument of this function, we have to pass here poll ID. As you can see, the implementation of delete poll by ID function inside the poll service. After calling the function, we have to show here snack bar with the caption poll deleted successfully. Let me remove this if condition. The catch block will show the error snack bar with the caption getting error while deleting poll. And the finally block that will use to set the loading state value to false. After deleting the poll, we have to call here the function fetch data to get the updated polls from server. Now you can take a look of a view my polls component. After that, I'm going to call get all polls endpoint in dashboard component. So let me copy this implementation. Let me open here dashboard component. We have to call here the endpoint get all polls. Let me import here use state, use snack bar, use callback, use effect. Now let's navigate to the browser. As you can see, the network tab with the status code we got 200 OK on API get all polls. On the response tab, we're getting here the polls. Now let's navigate to the my polls page. On my polls page, we're getting here the error use callback is not defined. Let me import this. Now as you can see, the status code we got 200 OK on my polls endpoint. As you can see, a dashboard component. So here I'm going to add the use navigate hook. Let me import this from red router DOM. After adding the use navigate hook, let me copy the backdrop tag from create poll component. Let me copy this. Let me add here inside the dashboard component. So we have to import this backdrop tag from material UI. With this, I'm going to import here the progress. On this tag, we have the property open, where we are checking here a loading state value. If loading has true, then we have to show the loader on the screen. Now on the top of this backdrop tag, we have to write the functionality to show the poll details that we are retrieving from server. So first we have the tag for box. Let me import this. Inside the box tag, we have the tag for grid. Let me import this. Inside this grid, we have a condition where we have to check here polls.length is equals to 0 and loading state value is not true. Then we will show this box tag where we have a tag for typography with a caption no polls found. With this we have a button with a caption create a poll. On the click of this button, we have to navigate a user to a create poll page. As you can see, the path of a create poll page /poll/create. So let me import here typography and the button tag. If a poll.length greater than 0 and loading has true, then we have to show here the poll details like the poll title, options and the votes with the expiry date. So here inside this block, we are calling here the JS function map on this use state polls. Inside this map function, we have a predicate variable poll that will hold single poll details. Inside this, we have the tag for grid. Inside the grid, we have the tag for card. Let me import this. Now inside the card, we have the tag for card header. Let me import this. On this tag, we have the props avatar, where we have a tag avatar. Let me import this. Inside this tag, we have to get the first character of the poll username, and we have to show the first character into this avatar. Second props that we have title with the value poll.username. Third props that we have subheader, where we have to show the poll posted date. Inside this function, we have to pass here poll.posted date. After the card header tag, we have the tag for card content. Let me import this. Inside this tag, we have the tag for typography, where we have to show poll.question. Second tag, that for paper. Let me import this. Inside the paper tag, we are showing here all the options title. We have to get them from poll. After the card content, we have the tag for card actions. Let me put here card actions. Inside this, we have the tag for typography, where we have to show here total vote count. Second typography, where we have to show the expiry date of this poll. Let me import this blue color from material UI. Now you can take a look of a dashboard component. Let's navigate to the browser. As you can see, a dashboard page where we are getting all the polls detail like the avatar, username, poll posted date, poll question, poll options, total vote count, and the expiry date. Let's click on this poll question and it's navigating us to a view poll details page. After showing a poll details on dashboard page, we have to show my polls on this page. From dashboard component, let me copy this HTML code. Let me add inside the statement of view my polls component. After the HTML code, let me copy the use navigate hook from dashboard component. Let me add here after the use navbar hook. Now at the last, let me copy these imports. Let me add on the top of view my polls component. Now you can take a look of a view my polls component. Let's navigate to the browser. As you can see, a page of my polls. On this page, I can see my polls detail. So as you can see, a component for view my polls. Inside this component, I'm going to define here the use state for anchor, selected poll, and the open. I use state for anchor and the selected poll by default null, and the open, that is a type of a boolean, and we have to initialize this with anchor use state. After defining the use states, let me add the functions for handle pop over open. Second, we have handle pop over close. This function will get event and the poll in argument. Inside this function, we have to call here the use state set anchor. Inside the argument, we have to pass here event dot current target. After that, we have to call here the use state set selected poll. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here a poll. In this function, we have to set the anchor state value to null. After defining these functions, let me scroll down. As you can see, a tag for card header. I'm going to add here the props for actions. So as you can see, a props action. Inside this, we have the tag for icon button. Let me put this. Inside this icon button, we have an icon, more word icon. After the icon button, we have the tag for pop over. Let me put this. On this tag, we have the props open. We were checking here the open state value and the selected poll is equals to poll. Second prop that we have anchor, where we have a value anchor use state. On close, we are calling it a function handle pop over close that will use to set the anchor state value to null. Inside this, we have the tag for box. Inside the box, we have the tag for menu item. Inside the menu item, we have the tag for remove red icon. On the click of this icon, we are navigating a user to a poll details page. As you can see the path /poll/poll ID/view. Second menu item where we have icon for delete. On the click of this icon, we are calling it a function handle delete poll. Inside the argument, we are passing here a poll ID. As you can see, the implementation of handle delete poll. I'm going to import word delete and the remove red icon on the top. So as you can see, the imports of the icons. Now you can take a look of a view my polls component. Let's navigate to the browser. As you can see, the word icon. Let's click on this. And we are getting here the pop-up where we have the two icons, view and the delete. On a click of view icon, it's navigating us to a view poll details page. Second icon that for delete, let's click on this. As you can see, the snack bar we got poll deleted successfully, and we're getting here the updated polls as well. Let's navigate to the VS Code. So as you can see, a component for dashboard. In this component, we will add the functionality to view poll details by clicking on a view icons as we did in view my polls component. So let me copy the code from this component. First, I'm going to copy these use states. Let me add here after the use navigate hook. Second, I'm going to copy the functions. Let me add here after the use effect hook. With this, I'm going to copy the actions props inside the card header tag. Let me add inside the return statement of dashboard component. Now inside this, we have only one icon, remove red icon. Let me remove this menu item tag. So here, let me import icon button. Second, I'm going to import here pop over. So here on the top, let me add here the import of more word icon. Second, we have remove red eye icon. Now you can take a look of a dashboard component. Let's navigate to the browser. Let's go to the dashboard page. Let me open the inspect. Let's go to the console. As you can see, we got an error. Menu item is not defined. Let me import this. So as you can see the icon, let's click on this and we're getting here the dialog where we have icon view. Let's click on this and it's navigating us to a view poll details page. As you can see that it is packaged in our Spring Boot application. So inside this, let me create a new Java class with the name comment. With this, I'm going to create a new Java class with the name likes. Let me copy the code from Auth entity. First, I'm going to copy these annotations. Let me add inside the comment class and the likes. With this, I'm going to copy the inner content of this class. Let me add here inside the comment class. First, we have the entity field long ID. On the top of this, we have the annotation @ID to make this field as a primary key in our table. Second field with the name created at, that is a type of a date. Third, we have private string content. Third, we have relation with the user, where we have a first annotation @many2one, like one user can post many comments. Second annotation @join column, where we have a column name user underscore ID. Validation that we have nullable false. Third annotation on delete. Fourth, we have JSON ignore. Let me remove this relation. At the last, we have relation with the poll, like one poll has many comments. A column name of poll inside the comment entity that we have poll underscore ID. Now at the last, let me update the method name get comment DTO. A return type of this method comment DTO. Let me create here a comment DTO class inside the DTOs package. So on the top of this class, let me add here the annotation @data. Inside this class, let me add here the parameters for comment DTO class. So the parameters are private long ID, private string content, private date created at, private string username, private long user ID, private long poll ID. Now here inside the comment entity, I'm going to update the return type of this method comment DTO. So it will be a public. Inside this, I'm going to create here an object of comment DTO. So first we have to set here ID. Second, we have to set here content. Inside the argument, we have to pass here content that will get from comment class. Third, I'm going to set here created at. Inside the argument, we have to pass here created at. Fourth, we have to set here poll ID that will get from poll.getID. Third, we have to set here user ID that will get from the user relation. At the last, I'm going to set here username. So we have to get here user dot get first name plus the space between a name. With this, we have to get here user dot get last name. And at the last, we have to return here comment DTO. After setting up a comment entity and the DTO, let me create a new interface inside the repositories package. So the interface name comment repository. On the top of this, let me add here the annotation @repository to make this interface as a repository in Spring Boot application. Let me extend this interface with a JPA repository. Inside the argument, we have to pass here comment entity. With this, we have to pass here a data type of a primary key long. After creating a comment repository, let me create here a new interface with the name likes repository. So on the top of this, let me add here the annotation @repository, and we have to extend this with JPA repository. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here likes entity. With this, we have to pass here a data type of a primary key long, and inside the DTOs package, let me create here a new Java class with the name likes DTO. So on the top of this, let me add here the notation @data. Let me copy the inner content of comment class. Let me add here inside the likes class. So inside this entity, we have a following fields: primary key, long ID, relation with the user, and a poll. At the last, we have a function with the name get likes DTO. A return type of this method likes DTO. Inside this, I'm going to create here an object of likes DTO. Let's go to the likes DTO. Inside this, I'm going to add here the parameters for this class. So the parameters are private long ID, private long poll ID, private long user ID, and private string username. So here inside the likes entity, I'm going to update this function. First, we have to set here ID. Second, we have to set here poll ID. Third, we have to set here user ID. At the last, we have to set here username, and we have to run here likes DTO. Now you can take a look of a likes entity. Here is a likes DTO. Here is a likes repository. Here is a comment entity. Here is a comment DTO, and here is a comment repository. Inside this interface, let me define here the method with the name. This method will get the poll ID in the argument, and the return type of this method that we have likes DTO. Let me import this. After adding this method in poll service, let me open here poll service implementation class. In this class, let me implement here the method with the name give like to poll. Inside this method, let me call here the poll repository and the query find by ID. Inside the argument, we have to pass here ID. On the left side of this, let me create an object of optional poll. After retrieving the poll by ID, I'm going to get here an optional user by calling the function from JWT util that we have get logged in user. On the left side of this, let me create here an object of user. After getting a logged in user, I'm going to add here the if condition where we have to check here user not is equals to null and optional poll is present. Then we have to move inside the if block. Otherwise, we have to return here null. Now inside the if block, I'm going to create here an object of likes. After creating an object, first I'm going to set here user, where we have to pass here user. With this, I'm going to set here poll. Here beside the argument, we have to pass here optional poll dot get. At the last, I'm going to call here likes repository. So first we have to inject here likes repository inside the poll service implementation class. So it will be a private final likes repository. After injecting it, let me call here likes repository and the query save. Inside the argument, we have to pass here like object and we have to run here get likes DTO and it will be a return. As you can see, the implementation of get likes DTO function inside the likes entity. This is a helper function that will convert the entity to DTO. After that, let me open here poll controller. From this, I'm going to copy this function. Let me add here after the get my polls function. So a mapping that we have get URL that we have /poll /like/id, name of a function give like to poll. So we have to get poll ID from URL. So let me add here the notation @path variable, data type long, variable name ID. Now inside this function, I'm going to call the function from poll service that we have give like to poll. Inside the argument, we have to pass here ID, and this function will return likes DTO, and it will be a like DTO. After getting the method response, we have to check here like DTO not is equals to null. Then we have to run the response with the status OK. And inside the body, we have to pass here like DTO. In case if a like DTO is equals to null, then we have to return here the HTTP status bad request. Now you can see the flow of a give like to poll API, where from this controller we are calling a method from poll service, and as you can see the implementation of give like to poll method inside the poll service implementation class. So as you can see a poll service. So inside this interface, let me define here the interface method with the name post comment on poll. Inside the argument, it will get an object of comment DTO. Let me import this, and the return type of this method that we have comment DTO. Now let's go to the poll service implementation class. So here I'm going to implement the method with the name post comment on poll. Now inside this function, first we have to get the poll by ID. With this, we have to get a logged in user by calling a function from JWT URL. So let me copy the code from give like to poll function. Let me add inside this function. So first we have to get here poll by ID. Let me get the poll ID from comment DTO dot get poll ID. After that, we are getting here logged in user by calling a function from JWT util. As you can see, the implementation of get logged in user function. After getting optional poll and the user, we have the if condition where we have to check here user not is equals to null and optional poll is present. Then we have to create here the object of comment entity. After creating an object, first we have to set here user. Second, we have to set here poll. Third, we have to set here content. We get content from comment DTO dot get content. At the last, I'm going to set here created at, that will be a new date, and we have to run here comment repository dot save. Inside the argument, we have to pass here comment entity. So first let me inject here comment repository on the top. So it will be a private final comment repository. Let me call here the instance comment repository and the function save. Inside the argument, we have to pass here comment object, and we have to run here get comment DTO. That is the helper function that will convert the entity to the DTO. We have to run here null in case if a user is null or optional poll is empty. After setting up this function inside poll service implementation class, let me open here poll controller. Let me duplicate this function. So a mapping that we have post URL that we have /poll /comment, name of a function post comment on poll. Inside the argument, we have annotation @request body, where we have to get here comment DTO. Now inside this function, we have to call the function from poll service that we have post comment on poll. Inside the argument, we have to pass here comment DTO. This function will return comment DTO. So let me create here an object of comment DTO, and it will be a posted comment DTO. After getting the method response, we have to check here posted comment DTO not is equals to null. Then we have to return the response with the status 200 OK. Inside the body, we have to pass here posted comment DTO. Inside the else block, we have to return here the response with the status bad request. Now you can take a look of a post comment on poll API, where from this controller we are calling it the method from poll service that we have post comment on poll. And as you can see, the implementation of post comment on poll function inside the poll service implementation class. As you can see, a poll service. So inside this interface, let me define here the interface method with the name post vote on poll. Inside the argument, it will get an object of vote DTO. Let me import this, and the return type of this method vote DTO. Now let me open here poll service implementation class. Into this class, let me implement here the method with the name post vote on poll. Now inside this function, we have to get optional poll, optional options, and the logged in user. So let me copy the code from this function. Let me add here inside this function. So as you can see, a query from poll repository that we have find by ID. Inside the argument, we have to pass here vote DTO dot get ID. After that, we have to get here optional options. So let me pass here the entity options and the object name optional option. On the right side of this, let me call here the instance of options repository and a query find by ID. Inside the argument, we have to pass here voted DTO dot get option ID. After that, we are getting here a logged in user. After getting these, we have the if condition where we have to check if a user not is equals to null and optional poll is present and optional option is present. Then we have to move inside the if block. Otherwise, we have to return here null. Now inside the if block, I'm going to create an object of vote entity. After creating an object, I'm going to add here the if condition where we have to check if optional poll dot get dot expired at before new date. Then we have to throw here entity not found exception with the message poll has expired and cannot be voted on. After checking a poll expiration, I'm going to set here a user. So it will be a vote dot set user. Inside the argument, we have to pass here user object. After that, I'm going to set here poll. Inside the argument, we have to pass here optional poll dot get. With this, I'm going to set here options. We have to pass here optional option dot get. After the options, let me set here posted date. That will be a new date. After setting these, I'm going to set here total vote count in optional poll. First, we have to get here existing total vote count. Optional poll dot get total vote count plus 1. With this, I'm going to set here vote count in optional option. So it will be a optional option dot get dot set vote count. First, we have to get here existing vote count from optional option plus 1. After that, let me call here the instance of options repository and a query save. Inside the argument, we have to pass here optional option dot get. Second instance, I'm going to call here vote repository and a query save. Inside the argument, we have to pass here vote object. Now on the left side of this, let me create here an object of vote and it will be a voted. The third instance, let me call here poll repository and a query save. Inside the argument, we have to pass here optional poll dot get and we have written here voted dot get vote DTO. After setting up a poll service implementation class, let me open here poll controller. Inside this, let me duplicate this function. So I'm going to update the function name that we have post vote on poll. Inside the argument, it has annotation @request body where we have to get here vote DTO object. So a mapping that we have post URL that we have /poll/vote. Inside this function, let me remove this. Inside this function, let me add here try and the catch block. The catch will catch the exception. And we have to return here response entity dot status that we have http status dot build request dot build. Inside the try block, we have to return here response entity dot okay. And inside the argument of this, I'm going to call the method from poll service that we have post vote on poll. Inside the argument, we have to pass here vote DTO. As you can see, the flow of a post vote on poll endpoint, where from this function, we are calling a method from poll service. And as you can see, the implementation of post vote on poll method. As you can see, a poll service. So inside this interface, let me define here the method with a name get poll by ID. Inside the argument, it will get poll ID, that is a type of a long, and the return type of this method that we have poll details DTO. Let me create this file inside the DTOs package. So a Java class name that we have poll details DTO. On the top of this class, let me add here the annotation that we have @data to create the getters and the setters of the parameters that we will define inside this class. So the parameters are poll DTO, list of comment DTO, likes and the comments count. Now we have to import this class. After that, let me open here poll service implementation class. Inside this class, let me implement here the method with the name get poll by ID. Let me copy the code from post port on poll function. Let me add here inside this function. Let me remove this line. So first we have to get here an optional poll by calling a query from poll repository, a query that we have find by ID. Inside the argument, we have to pass here poll ID that we are getting in argument. After getting an optional poll, we have to get here a logged in user by calling a function from JWT util get logged in user. As you can see, the implementation. After getting an optional poll and a logged in user, we have the if condition where we have to check if a user not is equals to null and optional poll is present. Then I'm going to get list of likes and the comment. So as you can see, the instance of likes repository. From this, we have to call here the query find all by poll ID. Inside the argument, we have to pass here long ID and the return type of this method that we have list of likes entity. Inside the argument of this query, we have to pass here optional poll.get ID. We are saving this query response into this object that we have list of likes. Second query we are calling from comment repository. Let me create this inside the comment repository. So this query will get long ID inside the argument and the return type of this method that we have list of comment entity. Inside the argument, we have to pass here optional poll.get ID. We are saving this query response into this object that we have list of comment. After that, I'm going to create here an object of poll details DTO. After creating an object, we have to set here poll DTO. Inside the argument, we are calling it the function get poll DTO in service. Inside the argument, we have to pass here optional poll.get. As you can see, the implementation of get poll DTO in service function, where we are converting a poll entity to the DTO. Actually, this is a helper function. After setting a poll DTO, I'm going to set here liked inside the poll DTO. Let me add this parameter inside the poll DTO class. So as you can see, the parameter name is liked. That is a type of a boolean. Inside the argument, we have to call the query from likes repository. Let me create this method inside the likes repository. Inside the argument, it will get a poll ID and the user ID and the return type of this query that we have an optional likes. As you can see, the parameters that we are passing into this query that we have poll ID and the user ID if it's present. After setting is liked, I'm going to map the comments and set username as you if a logged in user post the comment. So as you can see, we are calling here a stream.map method on comment list. Inside the map method, we have a predicate comment. After defining a predicate, we have created here a comment DTO object where we have to pass here comment dot get comment DTO. Let me update the function name that we have get comment DTO. After getting a comment DTO, we have the if condition where we have to check if a comment dot get user dot get ID equals to user dot get ID. Then we have to set here username you and we have to return here comment DTO. At the last, we have to combine all the list. After that, let me set here comment DTOs where we have to pass here comment DTO list. I'm going to set here the counts of likes and the comment. First, we have to set here the likes count. Inside the argument, we have to get the size of likes list and we have to convert this as long. Second, we have to set here comments count. Inside the argument of this, we have to get here the size of comment list and we have to convert this value as a long and we have to return here poll details DTO. Now you can take a look of a get poll by ID function. After setting up a poll service implementation class, let me open here poll controller. Let me duplicate this function. Update the function name that we have get poll by ID. So a mapping that we have get URL that we have /poll/id. Inside the argument of this function, I'm going to add here the annotation @path variable, a poll ID from URL. So the data type long, variable name ID. Now inside this function, we have to return here response entity.ok. Inside the argument of this, we have to call the method from poll service that we have get poll by ID. And inside the argument, we have to pass here long ID that we are getting from URL. Now you can see the flow of a get poll by ID function, where from this controller we are calling it the method from poll service. And as you can see, the implementation of get poll by ID function. As you can see, the service for poll. After this function, let me add here the function for get poll by ID. So it will be a async function. Inside the argument, it will get a poll ID. Inside this function, we have the try and the catch block. Inside the try block, we have to call here XGS instance and a mapping that we have get URL of the endpoint that we have /API/user/poll/poll ID, and we have to return here a response after getting it. The catch block will catch the exception in case of API failing, and we have to throw here the error. The second function, let me define here for give like to poll. So it will be a async function. Inside the argument, it will get a poll ID. Now inside this function, we have a try and the catch block. Inside the try block, we have to call here the get endpoint, where a URL API/user/poll/like/poll ID, and the catch block will catch the exception and we have to throw it. The third function, let me define here for post comment on poll. So it will be a async function. Inside the argument, it will get a comment DTO object. Inside this function, we have a try and the catch block. Inside the try block, we have to call here the post endpoint, where the URL API/user/poll/comment. After the URL, we have to pass here comment DTO object as a request payload of this endpoint, and we have to return the response after getting it, and the catch block will catch the exception and we have to throw the error. Fourth and the last method, let me define here for post vote on poll. So it will be an async function. Inside the argument, it will get an object. Inside this function, we have a try and the catch block. Inside the try block, we have to call here a post endpoint, where the URL API/user/poll/vote. After the URL, we have to pass here the request payload of this endpoint and we have to return the response. Now you can take a look of a poll service. After setting up a poll service, let me close this and I'm going to open here a dashboard component. Let me minimize this. Inside this dashboard function, I'm going to define the function for handle add vote. So as you can see, the function name handle add vote, it will be a async function. Inside the argument, it will get a poll ID and the option ID. Inside this function, first we have to call here the use state set loading to set the value true. After that, we have the try catch and the finally block. So as you can see, a try block, where first we are creating here the object, where we have to append here option ID and the poll ID. After that, we have to call here the function from poll service that we have post vote on poll. Let me put this function manually on the top. We have to pass here the object inside the argument of this function. After getting the API response, we have to check here our response status. If a status is 200, then we have to call here increase snack bar instance to show a success snack bar with a caption poll voted successfully. And we have to call here the function fetch data to fetch the updated results. After the try block, I'm going to add here catch and the finally block. So as you can see, the catch block that will catch the error. Inside the catch block, we have the if and the else condition. Inside the if, we have to check here if a error.response.status is 406. Then we have to show the snack bar with a caption poll has expired and cannot be voted on. And we have to call here the function fetch data to fetch the updated results. Inside the else block, we have to show here an error snack bar with the caption error while posting vote, and the finally block that will use to set the loading state value to false. Let me copy this function. Let me add inside the component of view my polls. I'm going to import this function from poll service. As you can see, the import. With this, I'm going to add this function inside the view poll details component. Let me add the import of this function on the top. With this, let me copy the use state from view my polls component. So the use state that we have loading. Let me add here inside this function. Let me add here after the loading state. And we have to import here use snack bar from notice stack. We have to get a poll ID from URL. So let me add here the hook for use params. On the left side of this, we have the variable name ID. Let me import the use params. After retrieving a poll ID from URL, let me add here a more use states for poll likes count, comments, and the new comment. After that, let me add here the function for handle like click. So it will be a async function. Inside the argument, it will get a poll ID. Inside this function, we have to call here a set loading use state to set the value true. After that, we have a try catch and the finally block. Inside the try block, we have to call here the function from poll service that we have give like to poll. Inside the argument, we have to pass here a poll ID. After getting the API response, we have to check here a response status. If a status is 200, then we have to call here the function fetch data. Let me add this function fetch data after this function. So as you can see, a function fetch data. So it will be a use callback. Inside this function, we have a try catch and the finally block. Inside the try block, we have to call here the function from poll service that we have get poll by ID. Inside the argument, we have to pass here the ID of a poll that we are getting from URL. After getting the API response, we have to check here a response status. If a status is 200, then we have to call here the use states like set poll, set likes count, set comments count, set comments. Inside the catch block, we have to show here an error snack bar with a caption error while getting poll, and we have to set here a poll null and the finally block that will use to set the loading value to false. Now inside the dependency array of this function, we have to pass here ID and the increase snack bar. We have to invoke this function inside the use effect hook. Like when a component mount, we have to call this function. So as you can see, a block for use effect. Inside this, we have to call here the function fetch data. Let me import here use effect. Now let's go back to the handle like click function, where after the try block, we have a catch block that will use to show an error snack bar with a caption error while giving like, and the finally block that will use to set the loading state value to false. Now at the last, I'm going to add the function for handle comment submit. So it will be a async function. Inside the argument, it will get a poll ID. Now inside this function, we have a try catch and the finally block. Inside the try block, we have to create an object where we have to append here poll ID and the content. These are the key value pairs. After creating an object, we have to call the function from poll service that we have post comment on poll. Inside the argument of this function, we have to pass here this object. After getting the API response, we have to check here a response status. If a status is 200, then we have to show the success snack bar with a caption comment posted successfully, and we have to call here the endpoint fetch data to get the latest poll details, and the catch block that will use to show the snack bar with a caption error while posting comment, and the finally block that will use to set the loading state value to false and set new comment that will be the empty codes. Now you can take a look of a view poll details component. Inside the return statement, let me copy the backdrop tag from view my polls component. Let me add here React fragment. Inside this, let me add here the backdrop tag that will use to show the loader on the screen when loading state value has true. So let me import here backdrop circular progress from material UI. As you can see, the property open where we are checking here a loading state value. If it's true, then we have to show the loader on the screen. Let's save this. Let's go back to the browser. Let me open here the inspect. Let's go to the network tab. Let me refresh this page. As you can see, we are getting here the API response. So I'm going to copy the code from the dashboard component, where I'm going to copy this box tag. Let me add inside the view poll details component. So as you can see, the return statement on the top of this backdrop tag. Let me add here the box tag. Inside the box tag, we have the tag for grid. Let me import here box. After that, we have a condition where we have to check here if a poll is equals to undefined and loading state as true, then we have to show here this box tag, where first we have a typography tag with an emoji, the second typography tag with the caption, oops, poll not found. So I'm going to import here typography. In case if a poll is not undefined, I'm going to update this condition where we have to check here poll. Inside this, we have the tag for grid. Inside the grid, we have the tag for card. Inside the card, we have the tag for card header. Let me import this. Inside the card header, we have a props avatar, where we have the tag for avatar. Let me import this. On the avatar, we are showing here the first character of the username of a poll owner. After the avatar props, let me remove here this action props. Second props that we have title, where we have to show here poll.username. Third prop that we have subheader, where we have to show poll.posted date. After the card header, we have the tag for card content. Let me import this. Inside this, we have a typography tag where we have to show the poll question. On the click of this poll question, we are navigating a user to a poll details page, but we are already on the view poll details page. So I'm going to remove this on click event. After the poll question, we are showing here the poll options. After the card content, we have the tag for card actions. Inside this, we are showing here the total vote count and the expiration of the poll. Now you can take a look of a box tag. Let's navigate to the browser. Let me open here the inspect. Let's go to the console. We are getting here the error, blue is not defined. Let me import this. With this, we are getting here the error, movement is not defined. Let me import this. Still getting error, paper is not defined. Let me import this. Let me add the import manually on the top. With this, I'm going to import here card actions. Now we can see the poll details on this page. Now after that, we have to show here the likes and the comments count. Let me minimize this. Now after the card actions tag, I'm going to add here the tag for divider. After the divider, I'm going to add here the tags for box and the grid. Let me add here the clothing tag for box. Now inside the grid, I'm going to add here the tag for grid, where we have to show the comment count. So as you can see, the tag for grid. Inside this, we have the tag for grid container. Inside this, we have the tag for comment icon. After that, we have the tag for typography, where we have to show the comments count. Let me put this comment icon on the top. Let's navigate to the browser. As you can see, we are getting here the comment count. After that, I'm going to show the like count. Let me minimize the comments count grid tag. On the top of this, let me add here the grid tag for likes count. So as you can see, the grid tag, first we are checking here if a poll is liked, then we have to show this icon. Otherwise, we have to show here favorite border icon, where on the click of this icon, we have to call here the function handle like click. Inside the argument of this, we have to pass here poll ID. On calling this function, we are calling here the endpoint give like to poll. After the icons, we have a typography tag where we have to show the likes count. Now on the top, I'm going to import these icons. So as you can see, the import. Now you can take a look of a view poll details component. after the card tag, I'm going to add here the tags for box, card, and the card content. Inside the card content, I'm going to add here the tag for typography, where we have a caption, comments. After the typography tag, we have the tag for box, where we have to show all the posted comments. So as you can see, the tag for box, inside this, we are calling here the JS function map on the comments use state. Inside the map function, we have a predicate, comment, and the index. Now inside this, we have the tag for divider. After the divider, we have the tag for typography, where we have to show the comment content. After showing the comment content, where we have to show here created ad and the username that this comment posted by this user. After the p tag, we have the tag for divider. Now after this box tag, I'm going to add here the functionality to post the comment. So as you can see, the tag for box, inside this we have the tag for text field. Let me import this. On this field we have the property value that we have a new comment use state. This property will use to show the default value of this text field. Second, we have a onChange event. On this event we have to clone the input value to this use state that we have set new comment. After this text field, let me add here the button to publish the comment. So as you can see, the tag for box, inside this we have the tag for button. Let me import this. On this button tag we have the property disabled, where we are checking here if a new comment is empty or it has white space, then we have to disable the button. After that we have a onClick event. On this event we are calling here the function handle comment submit. Inside the argument we have to pass here poll.id, and as you can see, the implementation of handle comment submit function. Now let's navigate to the browser. As you can see, the section for comments. Let me write here the comment like good poll. Let's click on the post comment button. As you can see, the snack bar we got comment posted successfully, and we can see the published comment that posted a few seconds ago by you. Now after that, I'm going to change the alignment of the comment and the likes count. So let me minimize this box tag. Let me expand this card tag. Inside this, I'm going to update this box tag with this grid. Now you can take a look of a view poll details component. Let's navigate to the browser. Now I'm going to click on this icon to add a like on this poll. As you can see, the poll liked successfully and we got the count as well. Let's go back to the dashboard page, and I'm going to open here this poll. Let's click on this like icon. As you can see, the poll liked successfully. With this, I'm going to add here the comment like good one. Let's click on the post comment button. The comment posted successfully. As you can see, the component for view poll details. As you can see, the tag for card content. Inside this tag, I'm going to add here the condition after the typography tag, where we are showing here the poll question. So as you can see, the condition where we are checking here poll.voted or poll.expired, then we have to show the poll vote percentage on the every option of the poll. Inside this, I'm going to call the method map on the poll.options DTOs. Inside this, we have the tag for React fragment. Let me import this. Inside the React fragment, I'm going to add here the tag for div. Inside the div, I'm going to add here the tag for linear progress. So as you can see, the tag for linear progress. Let me import this. On this tag, we have the props value, where we are showing here the percentage of the poll vote. So as you can see, the simple mathematics formula that we have option dot vote count divided by poll dot total vote count, and we have to multiply this with 100. If this formula value is not a number, then we have to show here the 0. Otherwise, we have to show the value of this formula. After the linear progress, I'm going to add here the tag for div. So as you can see, the tag for div. Inside this, we have the tag for typography. First, we have to show here the option title. Second, we have to show the percentage of the total vote count on the particular option. We are calculating here the formula value on this option title. If a value is not a number, then we have to show this percentage. Otherwise, we have to show here the value of the formula. After this typography tag, we have to show this icon when option dot user voted this option has true. I'm going to import this icon on the top. So as you can see, the import. In case if a poll.voted or poll.expired has false, then you have to show all the options. So let me cut this. Let me add here inside this block. We're calling here the JS function map on poll.options DTOs. Inside this, we have the tag for paper, where we are showing here all the poll options title. On this paper tag, I'm going to add here the event on click. On this event, we have to call here the function handle add vote. Inside the argument, we have to pass here poll ID and the option ID. As you can see, the implementation of handle add vote function. Let me give you the overview again of this block. So we are checking here the value of poll.voted or poll.expired has true. Then we have to show the results of the poll, where we have to calculate the percentage of the vote count on every option. In case if a poll.voted or poll.expired has false, then we have to show this paper tag, where on the click of this, we are calling it the function handle add vote to post a vote on a poll. Now at the last, I'm going to update this card actions tag, where I'm going to replace this React fragment with this condition, where we are checking here if a poll.expired has true, then we have to show this typography tag, where we have to show the total vote count. In case if a poll.expired has false, then we have to show these typography tags. First, we have to show here total vote count and the expired at. Now you can take a look of a view poll details component. Now let's navigate to the browser. Let's click on this icon to view this poll. Now as you can see, we are getting here the final results because this poll has expired. Let's go to the dashboard page and I'm going to open this poll, where we have the expiry of this poll August 20. Let's go to the view details page and I'm going to click on this option to add a vote on this poll. As you can see, the snack bar we got poll voted successfully, and we are getting here the percentage on this option with a check circle. After the options, we are getting here the total vote count on this poll. Let's go back to the dashboard page and I'm going to open this poll in view poll details page. Let's click on this option to add vote on this poll. As you can see, the snack bar we got poll voted successfully, and we are getting here the percentage value with a check circle. I'm going to copy the code from view poll details component. So let me copy this. Let me open here the dashboard component. Little bit scroll down. After this typography tag, I'm going to add here the code that we have copied from view poll details component. With this, I'm going to copy the card actions tag from view poll details component. Let me replace this with the updated card actions tag. So I'm going to import here React, linear progress, check circle, outline icon on the top. Now you can take a look of a dashboard component. Let's navigate to the browser. As you can see, the dashboard page where we are getting here the poll results. On this poll, I'm going to click on this option to add a vote on this poll. So as you can see, the snack bar we got, poll voted successfully. Now after that, I'm going to call the endpoint on view my polls page. So let me copy the code from dashboard component. Let me add inside the view my polls component. With this, let me copy this card actions tag. Let me add here inside the view my polls component. So we have to import here React linear progress and the check circle outline icon on the top. Now you can take a look of a view my polls component. Now let's navigate to the browser. Let me open here my polls page. Little bit scroll down. I'm going to select here the option to add a vote on this poll. I'm going to select this option Spring Boot. As you can see, poll voted successfully.